3 years ago Earth entered the era of spiritual awakening, and the world raced to study the new power as some awakened extraordinary abilities to fight monstrous threats. Now a man collapses, blood spilling from his mouth, glaring at Lee and asking why she betrayed him before pain cuts him off. She tilts her head, notes he is still alive, then turns to a dark energy radiating man approaching. She greets Yudo, who says the final game is ending, wraps an arm around her, and tells the fallen man all his teammates died by his hand and he is next. He asks if Shinji has any last words, and despite his wounds Shinji swears he will never forgive him. Yudo laughs that it won't matter once Shinji is dead, then drives a brutal kick that sends him flying toward a pack of fang beasts below. As they close in, flashes of his dead comrades fill his mind, and blaming himself, he swears that if there's another life, he'll drag Lee and Yudo to hell. He plunges into the abyss where a colossal monster waits, his curse echoing, when a glowing blue interface appears and a mechanical voice announces the Supreme Martial Arts Acquisition System is activated, detecting critical condition and insufficient existence points, initiating time reversal to a random point. Countdown 3, 2, 1. A soccer match plays on TV, and as the ball hits the net Shinji's eyes snap open in shock. He springs up from the couch, sweating, and checks the time, 2:35 p.m. A system notification appears, player data loaded, select attribute. Staring at the interface, Shinji realizes he's alive again with a god-tier system. His resolve hardens as he notes, he's been sent back 1 month before the spiritual awakening, when the world is calm but spiritual energy is already stirring. Soon humans, animals, and plants will mutate, spiritual fruits will grant abilities, and strange items will surface, making anyone who absorbs their power stronger. Determined, he looks out the window and decides 1 month is enough to grow powerful. He opens the system introduction showing attribute development, skill addition, point exchange, and daily missions, then immediately chooses the fire attribute for its offensive strength. A notification appears, preparing the fire attribute skill, and golden light bursts out as he gains a purple tier skill, Brahma Crystal Inferno, along with 5 bonus attribute points. A pinkish-purple crystal forms above his palm, and when he clenches his fist, it shines brightly as flames erupt around him. His phone rings, showing Amora Lee, and he answers. She asks for 200,000 to buy a bag, but he refuses sharply and ends the call. In a luxury car, Lee frowns at his response while Yudo laughs and asks if she upset her wallet. Lee glared at him, muttering she didn't understand what Shinji was trying to do. Yudo reminded her she was supposed to maintain a good relationship with him, but she clung to his arm, saying the only one she cared to please was him. Yudo smiled, stroked her hair, and told her to try on the outfit he bought earlier, but she hesitated. The scene shifted to a hospital where Shinji, looking exhausted, cursed that if he'd been reborn a few days earlier, he could have asked which hospital she was in. He had already checked 3. A hazy memory surfaced of sitting on a grassy hill with a young girl who said she thought she was just sick, so her father made her take out supplements until her ice-type spirit core was destroyed. Shinji stood in silence before determination filled his eyes. This time he would protect Mika and her spirit power. Inside the hospital room, a heart monitor beeped steadily as doctors gathered around the bed, one frowning and asking why her vitals were stable. Her body temperature still would not rise as Matsumoto pleaded with Dr. Lee to save his daughter. Dr. Lee checked her pulse, asked if she had traveled recently, and learned they had gone to Iceland last month to celebrate her college admission, returning last week before this began. He diagnosed excessive yin energy that needed to be countered with yang energy, said he would prescribe medicine to be taken exactly as directed, and warned that delay could be fatal. Matsumoto thanked him, but Dr. Lee said recovery depended on her will. Shinji suddenly burst in, drawing surprise. Matsumoto asked who he was. A young doctor wondered if he was Dr. Lee's student, but Dr. Lee said he had no students. Another doctor told him civilians were not allowed and staff moved to remove him. Shinji broke free and told Matsumoto his daughter was awakening ice-type spirit power, a rare attribute, and wrong treatment could destroy her future. A nurse scoffed and told them to throw him out, but Dr. Lee ordered them to stop, then asked how Shinji knew about ice-type spirit power and who he was. Shinji knew the old man understood something but stayed cold, saying who he was didn't matter, only saving her. Dr. Lee noted that if Shinji spoke this way, he must have a method. Without replying, Shinji walked to the bed and recited a prescription of 2G ginger, 2G enite, 5G cinnamon bark, and 1G codenopsis. The room fell silent as staff realized it matched Dr. Lee's prescription exactly, and wondered if Shinji knew traditional medicine or had eavesdropped. Dr. Lee said the prescription alone would not wake the girl, but Shinji raised a hand, saying one crucial ingredient was missing: Stardew flower. The air went still as Dr. Lee repeated the name, admitting it could indeed wake her but no longer existed in the world. Another doctor remarked that if it was gone, then everything Shinji said was meaningless, questioning where he had learned this. Mr. Matsumoto stepped forward, eyes tense, telling Dr. Lee that if the Stardew flower was needed, he would pay any price, but Dr. Lee shook his head, saying it was not sold anywhere and described it as star-shaped with deep blue petals, silver pollen, and a soft starlight glow at night, its essence able to heal wounds and ease pain, though now it existed only in ancient texts from when Earth was full of spiritual energy. Matsumoto, near shouting, demanded if his daughter would remain like this forever, but Shinji stepped up, firmly stating he would save Mika without leaving a scar. Dr. Lee's eyes lit up, asking if Shinji truly possessed the legendary flower, and Shinji calmly confirmed it. A young doctor scoffed, calling it impossible and accusing him of overhearing the prescription, but Dr. Lee countered by asking how he knew of the flower, leaving the young doctor fumbling for an answer, suggesting Shinji might have made it up or seen it in a game, while Shinji closed his eyes with a long sigh. Inside his mind the system activated and opened the points exchange menu, fully unlocked, asking which item to redeem. Shinji thought of the Stardew flower, a chime sounded, and 5 points were deducted as a small box appeared. He opened it to reveal the glowing blue flower and, glancing at the arguing group, told them to look at the real thing. Silence fell as all eyes went to it, and Dr. Lee, shocked, asked how he had obtained such a herb. Shinji raised the box and asked if they now believed he could save Mika, prompting Dr. Lee to apologize and urge him to use it. Everyone gathered at her bed as Shinji looked at her unconscious form, then brought the flower closer. The air around her lit with blue light as energy specks entered her body, her vitals stabilized, and a nurse reported her temperature rising. A doctor, stunned, said it was working as Mika's condition stabilized and her eyes slowly opened. She looked up weakly, her lips trembling, and Shinji told her to rest, assuring they would meet again. Mr. Matsumoto was told to care for her so she could regain strength, and with tears in his eyes he gripped Shinji's hand in gratitude. As Shinji turned to leave, Dr. Lee asked him to stay for tea, but he declined, saying maybe another time. Dr. Lee then asked for his name, and with a casual wave, Shinji introduced himself as Fuji Shinji. Night fell, and in a dim room lit only by a computer screen, Shinji sat staring at the monitor, recalling a website from his previous life that listed cultivation levels. He searched and found it, Electric Elevation, showing detailed stages from Level 1 Spirit Awakening, Level 2 Soul Rooting, Level 3 Energy Conduction, Level 4 Core Formation, Level 5 Mystic Manifestation, Level 6 Sky Ascension, Level 7 Sage Dominion, to Level 8 Imperial Servant, each with traits and powers, and he studied the screen intently. In his past life a war for spiritual energy erupted, and when he fell he had only reached Level 3. The scene shifts to him meditating in a hot spring, steam rising in a dreamlike veil as a faint flame-like aura of spiritual energy swirls around him, and he thinks the heavenly flame frenzy technique is truly on another level. Closing his eyes, he resolves to dedicate this life entirely to cultivation and to reach the realm of the Imperial Servant. Elsewhere, a man approaches Dr. Lee, asking if it is true he met a Shinji with the Starlight Bloom who already possessed spiritual energy, and Dr. Lee confirms it, addressing him as Chairman Liu. Hope flashes in Liu's eyes as he says the Shinji is a natural talent who could change the future of the world if he grows stronger, handing a photo to the woman beside him and ordering her to measure the boy's strength, which she accepts with a bow. Excitement fills his voice as he calls this a miraculous discovery. Back at Shinji's cultivation, he suddenly shouts, flames bursting violently from his body as he stands with fists clenched, crimson fire wrapping around him, and seeing the change in his physique, he remarks that as expected of a purple-grade technique, one session has already brought him to level 2. Stepping from the hot spring, he notices the water turned black and wonders how it became so filthy after one day without bathing, but his thought is cut short by a growl from his stomach. He quickly dresses and steps out into the cool night breeze, streetlights casting long shadows as his footsteps echo on the quiet road. High above atop a street lamp, a figure stands motionless with a data sheet in hand, razor-sharp eyes fixed on him, muttering that she has found him before drawing a circular moon-like weapon enveloped in violet energy and hurling it with a thought, telling herself not to be disappointed. The weapon shoots forward at terrifying speed and explodes midair in a violent blast of energy, from which emerges a giant violet demonic wolf with crimson eyes and razor-sharp fangs. Shinji faces it, his eyes flashing as he mutters that the mutations have begun. Seeing the monster dog, Shinji stays calm, raises a hand to block the stench of its breath as the wolf-like beast charges in to bite, but he leaps into the air to dodge, only for its massive tail to slam into his leg, knocking him back. Pain shoots through him, but without pause he declares it will die and his fist bursts into flame as he unleashes Emperor's Fist, the blazing strike falling like a meteor and engulfing the beast in fire until it collapses in an explosion of ash. Hunger hits him instantly. Perched on a nearby streetlight, a girl watches in disbelief, realizing he has awakened a fire-type ability famed for its unmatched offense. She hurries to the corpse, notices the tail is broken, recalls the earlier bone-cracking sound, and realizes it came from the monster, not him, a thought that chills her as she wonders at his durability. The next morning in his apartment, Shinji wakes sore, decides he must train harder, and an emergency news broadcast appears on the TV. A morning news report announces record-breaking temperatures at Mount Shiranui, urging all tourists and residents to evacuate immediately and warning that false claims about the heat draining body moisture are dangerous, as the cause is identified as an atmospheric anomaly. Shinji steps closer to the screen, recognizing it as the awakening of fire-type spirit energy, and seeing it as the perfect chance to absorb it. He quickly dresses and rushes outside, only to find Lee at his door demanding 200,000 to buy a bag. Annoyed, he thinks she should be in a hospital instead of shopping and recalls telling her to stay away the day before, but she insists she will stop caring about him if he refuses. Not wanting to waste time, he shouts for her to go and never show her face again, leaving her unsettled. At Mount Shiranui, the temperature has soared, the mountain glowing red like overheated iron. Despite the area being cordoned off, crowds gather as police warn that the internal temperature has reached 81 degrees Celsius and entering will cause instant combustion. Skeptics remain, and one man tosses an ear of corn into the zone, causing it to instantly pop into popcorn, shocking the onlookers as some push forward while others yell for them to stop. At that moment Shinji arrived, perching atop a vehicle and observing the scene with satisfaction as he confirmed the area was saturated with fire element spiritual energy, then leapt down without hesitation and dashed into the mountain. Seeing someone rush into the danger zone, the crowd panicked, yelling it was too dangerous and telling him to come back or he would die. Inside, his expression changed as he realized the fire spiritual energy was far purer than expected, and absorbing it brought searing pain as though every cell in his body burned, yet he continued with fierce determination, vowing silently to become stronger. Outside, the crowd grew louder, pointing out that his body was glowing and flames shot from his eyes, which made him realize he was drawing too much attention, so he moved instantly, transforming into a streak of light and disappearing deeper into the mountain, leaving onlookers stunned and wondering if they had witnessed a god or celestial being, some regretting not recording it. Meanwhile, police noticed the mountain's temperature dropping rapidly, and one officer speculated in fear whether he was a deity or something more terrifying. In a luxurious room, Chairman Liu watched the televised reports of the mysterious young man at Mount Shiranui whose presence seemed to calm the chaotic weather, then immediately called to order all news coverage about the event to be stopped, warning that if word spread further it would cause public panic. Turning to the man behind him, he confirmed Shinji had defeated a monster with a single punch and was unaffected by its attacks, then narrowed his eyes and said they must recruit him before other factions acted, finally deciding he would personally go to meet Shinji. After absorbing power from Mount Shiranui, Shinji returns to his apartment to continue cultivating, reaching level 2 by morning when the system announces he has unlocked a new attribute slot as a reward for entering the Spirit Spring stage, allowing him to add and train a new attribute. Before he can process this, another notification reveals the spell fusion feature, enabling him to permanently fuse an innate attribute into a weapon with durability based on its material. Excited, he checks the system panel, realizing he can now forge his own weapon, and rushes to the kitchen to test it on his utility knife, but a knock at the door stops him. Wondering who would visit at this hour, he opens it to find Chairman Liu, who calmly introduces himself as Liu Jinhu, head of the Spiritual Cultivation Association, they stating they came to discuss matters of spiritual cultivation. Shinji, stunned by the association's name, recalls in his past life that he and Mika once received help from someone tied to them, but in this timeline sees no link. Taking the business card they offer, he studies Liu warily, intent on knowing how they discovered him. Chairman Liu takes out a photo of Mika and says Shinji had recently treated her, a fact learned from Dr. Lee, adding she has already joined the association. Shinji lets them in, and after brief talk Lu invites him to join, but Shinji refuses, saying he will decide after spiritual energy fully returns. Yu warns that his stage 2 breakthrough was luck, and without their guidance he cannot reach Spirit Spring soon, adding Earth will face major changes where cultivating will be the only way to gain strength. Yu explains that the association's guidance is crucial, sharing that she once refused their offer and failed to awaken for 3 years. But after joining she succeeded in under a year and surpassed the Spirit Awakening stage in 3 more. Shinji, surprised, asks her age, and she replies she is 21 before questioning why he asked, prompting him to give a thumbs up and call her a genius, though he privately doubts her potential. Yu confidently says all association members are geniuses. Chairman Lu adds that Shinji would receive strong support if he joined, but a phone call interrupts. Lu answers and hears a report of a level 2 beast 30 kilometers away, possibly poison attributed and in the form of a giant snake. He orders the entire area sealed and for them to head there immediately. Lu ends the call and turns to Shinji, apologizing as he leaves with Yu, saying they will discuss the matter later. Watching them go, Shinji reflects that he no longer feels the helplessness he once did and has reached the early stage of the Spirit Spring phase, though he knows future breakthroughs will be harder. He checks his phone map, wondering if there's another place rich in fire-type spiritual energy, when a sudden late-night call startles him. Annoyed, he answers, only for his friend Kotoj to panic about his house being haunted. Thunder has rumbled behind it all day without a drop of rain. Narrowing his eyes, Shinji suspects thunder-type spiritual energy and asks for details. Kotoj describes a darkened sky and constant thunder, begging for help. Certain now, Shinji recalls that spiritual energy attributes come in 3 tiers: common, water, fire, wind, earth, rare ice, light, darkness, thunder, and legendary space-time. Having unlocked a new attribute slot, he sees this as a chance to acquire thunder energy. He tells Kotoj to guide him to the mountain behind his house and keep everyone away until he arrives. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a tall woman named Kaori orders 2 men to follow, announcing their first mission: to reach a mountain where a powerful source of thunder energy has awakened and collect it before it disperses. When Shinji reaches the mountain, the sky is swallowed by dark clouds, and flashes of lightning tear through the gloom in rapid succession. The sight makes his chest swell with excitement, the air itself alive with currents of power. There is no doubt, this is lightning-type spiritual energy. The system's voice echoes in his mind, warning that lightning is a rare attribute and will require twice the usual spiritual energy to enhance, asking if he wishes to proceed. Staring at the glowing interface, he answers with a confident smile, pressing accept without pause. A moment later, the system announces the activation in progress before congratulating him on acquiring the rare lightning attribute, blue variant. Holding the crystal tightly, he feels its raw force humming through his palm, the blue hue radiating an energy as fierce as the storms above. As expected of a rare element, this lightning power is now his. A massive lightning bolt slams into the ground nearby, while elsewhere a group tries to absorb lightning-type energy. Watching the sky's strange display, they question if it's even possible to collect such power. A blond man lifts a thermos flask with doubt, asking if it can hold so much energy. But Kaori orders silence, takes the flask, and raises it to absorb the raging storm. 2 men behind her cheer at her skill, yet cracks quickly form on the flask's surface, startling her as she realizes it might not withstand the energy. Before it can explode, the blond man yanks her away just in time, saving her from harm. The sky roars again, lightning striking the ground more violently, prompting Kaori to order the 2 men to run as the energy spirals out of control. Suddenly, a strange sound comes from the distance. Following the noise, they spot Shinji approaching, and Kaori stares at him in shock, wondering why a civilian is in such a place. Kaori's surprise shifts to concern as she warns Shinji the area is extremely dangerous and he must leave immediately, but he ignores her, eyes on the lightning-charged sky, sprints past the trio into the strike zone, and is hammered by repeated bolts. The onlookers shout that he's done for and wonder if he can't hear, yet he doesn't flinch, leaving them stunned that no ordinary person could survive it. And even the experienced Kaori starts suspecting he has the rare lightning attribute. Possessed by very few, fully engulfed in surging arcs and racked with pain, Shinji lifts his head and roars that they cannot defeat him and tells them to listen carefully. Shinji declares that not even the heavens can stop him nor the earth bury him, vowing to make his name echo across the world where neither gods nor demons can halt his steps, and his eyes blaze with determination as lightning crackles within them. He throws back his head, screaming while drawing the lightning into his body like a wrathful deity seizing power from heaven and earth until the storm quiets and a faint glow radiates from him. Feeling the rush of newfound strength, he hears the system announce his successful absorption of fire and lightning spiritual energies and offers to fuse them into the legendary Thunderfire attribute, and without hesitation he accepts as crimson flames and bluish-purple lightning erupt and swirl around him before merging into one. Shinji stands wreathed in flames laced with violent lightning, the fusion complete and his body radiating a fearsome, majestic power. The unexpected legendary attribute surges through every vein, leaving him awestruck. The scene shifts to an abandoned factory under a storm-dark sky, rain pelting down as three figures wait outside. Yu listens as the man beside her reports only one mutated beast inside, a giant snake. She nods, noting it's a poison type, then hands 2 crystals to her companions, instructing them to break the jade inside if in danger to trigger a protective barrier, warning against reckless moves. The men nod and prepare before they enter the pitch-black interior, where massive red eyes flash from the shadows. Yu shouts a warning, but the serpent lunges, striking one man and hurling him back. The other retaliates, freezing its massive body in ice. They think the fight is won, but Yu's instincts say otherwise. She orders them to run. The ice explodes, the snake roars, and a cloud of green toxic gas engulfs the 2 men, dropping them instantly. Yu tries to call headquarters, but the poison overtakes her before she can speak, and darkness claims her. After Yu's signal was lost, Lu Tinho hurried to find Shinji, explaining the situation with urgency and pleading for his help, saying only he possessed the strength to end this threat. Studying the report on the rare poison attribute snake, Shinji felt a pang of regret. Had his attribute slots not already been full, he would have claimed it himself. Lu pressed on, stressing that the girl's life was still uncertain and that their only hope lay with him, the one who had awakened the fire attribute. Shinji frowned, questioning how Lu knew of his power, and Lu, scratching his head with a faint smile, admitted assigning someone to watch him, who had witnessed his victory over the mutated dog. Realizing the creature had been released as a test, irritation flickered in Shinji's gaze as he accused him of spying. Lu defended his actions as necessary for public safety, then promised to end all surveillance if Shinji took on the mission. With a firm look, Shinji agreed, demanding the monitoring stop immediately. Lu clasped his hands in relief, vowing to honor the deal and offering to supply whatever number of people Shinji required for support. The offer from Lu was tempting, but Shinji, confident in his newly acquired power, declined, saying he alone could destroy the snake. Inside the factory, Yu slowly regained consciousness, still alive despite the unknown circumstances. Dizziness made her stagger, and when she opened her eyes, she saw the area shrouded in green toxic gas and the giant snake evolving by absorbing the cultivator's energy. Realizing the danger, she struggled to her feet, but the snake noticed her and lunged with its mouth wide open, revealing sharp blade-like teeth. Yu quickly channeled her strength into her right hand, unleashing a burst of cold energy that formed a sharp ice pillar aimed at the snake, but it shattered instantly against the creature's thick scales, leaving her stunned at how powerless her once proud ability felt against it. Before she could react, the snake lashed out with its tail, sending Yu crashing into the ground, coughing up blood and paralyzed from the impact. The snake had completed its evolution, and despair surged through her, thinking all might be lost. At that moment, a familiar voice spoke, noting the coincidence of the factory and a past job, and Yu looked up in disbelief to see Shinji walking toward her, casually mentioning that Chairman Lu had sent him to save them but asking where everyone else was. Ignoring his question, she shouted for him to leave, warning that the snake had evolved to Tier 3, far beyond his level. Shinji, unfazed, sighed and said he would handle it, turning toward the massive snake with eyes gleaming in challenge. The snake roared and lunged with jaws wide open, and Yu cried out for him to run, but Shinji smiled as red flames and crackling lightning twisted across his body, declaring he would destroy the darkness with the power of thunder. As the giant snake lunged at him, Shinji delivered a devastating punch to its head, causing a deafening explosion that hurled the massive beast backward into the factory wall, blowing a huge hole through it. Realizing it was no match, the snake tried to escape, and Yu, frozen for a moment, quickly shouted for him to go after it. Shinji smirked, saying it wasn't going anywhere, and shot forward like a bolt of lightning, unleashing a blinding fusion of fire and thunder from his hands that reduced the fleeing snake to ash instantly. Yu gasped, realizing he had awakened both fire and lightning attributes, a dual awakening considered a miracle even within the Cultivation Association. Shinji reflected that in his past life the association helped civilians, and now perhaps revealing his power wouldn't be bad. Calmly, he confirmed to Yu that both attributes were awakened. Back at headquarters, Yu reported the situation to Chairman Liu, who stroked his beard thoughtfully, realizing why Shinji had asked to stop monitoring him, and decided they must invite Shinji to join the association. Yu, confused, asked about stopping surveillance, but Liu only smiled strangely and asked if it was time she found herself a boyfriend, leaving her wide-eyed in disbelief. Inside the office during a meeting, a man suggested to Chairman Liu that they announce the revival of spiritual energy, noting that recent incidents were becoming frequent and could no longer be hidden, while another man argued that such an announcement would cause social chaos, and the first countered that it could have prompted timely evacuations during yesterday's factory incident. Though the other replied that the situation had been resolved, the debate continued while the chairman stayed silent. Then he addressed everyone, acknowledging that without Fuji Shinji's help, he might have lost his daughter and subordinates and that residents could have been harmed, but announcing spiritual energy's revival would also create upheaval, so he proposed using several marked locations where revival had been confirmed as test sites, promoting surrounding areas for tourism to monitor public reaction and decide future steps. Which the men agreed was a good idea, and the chairman then raised a book to discuss inviting Shinji to join the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association as a spot leader, prompting some to argue that giving him such a high position immediately might upset lower-ranked members, but the chairman stressed Shinji's dual lighting and fire abilities and the risk of angering him if given a low position, leading others to suggest a test to measure his abilities so that, if suitable, everyone would more readily accept him as spot leader. This really raised the chairman's eyebrows as he warned everyone to be careful and not regret their suggestions later. While at home, Shinji woke up thinking a thief had broken in after hearing a strange voice, walking through his house angrily, cursing about being broke and having to buy cheap instant noodles, and shouting that he would teach the thief a lesson if caught, but it turned out to be Yu mopping the floor, greeting him good morning. Which cooled his anger, though he demanded to know why you were in his house, reminding Yu that yesterday you agreed not to monitor him anymore, and you lifted cup noodle boxes, saying you had come to live with him, making his eyes widen as he later rested on the sofa, asking if you wanted him to take the test, to which you confirmed, while he thought about having only 3 days left until the big spiritual energy revival and initially refused. But you explained the test was specially prepared by the Association for Cultivators, in a recently revived spiritual energy area, mostly with new members, and a chance to meet comrades, prompting him to recall that Mika would be participating and decide to join as well, thinking he had business with her. While elsewhere, the chairman addressed his team, warning that peaceful lives were ending in a world where death was coming, and introduced an advanced spiritual energy cultivator as captain for the training. As Kaori remembered seeing a figure wrapped in lightning and wondered about the captain, joking with a companion who assumed he was just some rich kid, while friends cheered for Ken, and Kaori warned him not to cause trouble, and you explained to Shinji the team composition, 5 members, 2 women and 3 men, noting that apart from Mika's eyes attribute, the others were common, and that Yusher Ken, formerly involved in the underworld and awakened to the mint attribute, had a rough personality and resisted orders, which Shinji acknowledged, just as the chairman announced that the captain had arrived. As Shinji arrived, everyone's eyes widened, realizing he was the one the dead had said helped them, and Kaori remembered the figure wrapped in lightning spiritual energy on the mountain, while the chairman introduced him as their new captain, prompting Yusher to question whether Shinji was truly capable and whether they would be burdened by him, to which Shinji challenged him, asking if he wanted to try. And an angered Yusher replied that he would not hold back. Shinji asked if a bubbling spring-level fighter could handle him, prompting Yusher to shout and charge, radiating electrical energy. But before he could strike, the chairman stepped in, holding Yusher's fist and asking if he intended to defy the association's orders, leaving Yusher taken aback as he argued that leaders must demonstrate their abilities to earn respect. While others agreed that in their world cultivators' strength demands followership, the chairman reminded them that Shinji had proven his power by single-handedly subduing a giant snake and saving them, warning that anyone who disrupts discipline would be expelled, and then explained that their next mission was to defeat a creature called the Throne Beast, a humanoid capable of free movement, cautioning that on the path of cultivation, death is always near. The group moved into the forest, Shinji thinking this must be the spot the chairman mentioned, though he saw no sign of the monster and wondered if it was underground. The girl asked if he was still moving forward or listening, and he noted that as they neared the big tree, the spiritual energy grew stronger, though he still sensed nothing of the creature, instructing everyone not to get too close and to search the area for clues, which the girl acknowledged. Yushir teased if Shinji was nervous, joking about the tree suddenly walking, while others laughed, and Shinji warned that anyone ignoring his instructions would be responsible for themselves. Yushir went to inspect the tree, marveling at its powerful spiritual energy, and a friend suggested they could train here, leveling up directly with it, while Shinji thought that if he absorbed enough energy to reach level 3, even they would have to follow him. Yushir imagined being surrounded by girls, saying they should train while they could, and the group sat around the tree to meditate. The girl asked if they would be okay, and Shinji assured her he would handle anything that happened. Kaori reminded him they had met a few days ago, on the mountain during the lightning revival, and he asked if she had been there for fun, which made her annoyed as she explained they had been dispatched to subdue the lightning energy but had been scolded afterward because no one believed her reports about someone absorbing the energy. Shinji acknowledged her concern and told her and the girl they should train here too, noting the abundant spiritual energy. And when the girl asked if he would train, he said the energy did not match his attribute, so it was fine if just they two trained, which Kaori agreed to. A strange voice echoed, and the three turned toward it, seeing the tree lift a branch that moved like a tentacle, Yushir's friends wrapped and hanging upside down. Shaken, Yushir shouted, asking what was happening, while his friends screamed for help. He raised 2 fingers, wind swirling around him, and dashed with his dagger, striking the branch in all directions, gritting his teeth in disbelief as he cut it and freed one friend, only for them to warn him of an attack from the left. Another branch struck Yushir, throwing him far, and he recalled the chairman's warning that once on the path of cultivation, death is always close. As the tall tree readied a final strike, Shinji intervened, cutting all the branches and telling Yushir to get out of there. Yushir clenched his teeth, saying he couldn't run and leave his comrades behind. Shinji smirked, noting his guts, and Yushir insisted a man who abandons his comrades is the lowest of the low. Shinji bent down, infused the dagger with his lightning flame attribute, making it glow blue, and without a word threw it at the front of a branch. The tree released all the men it had trapped, roaring in pain. Shinji urged Yushir to hurry, warning the monster was about to show itself, and just then, a massive bubbling spring level 3 thorn beast appeared. The men shouted in shock, and Shinji reminded them of Chairman Lu's words that the path of cultivation always carries the risk of death. The monster threw daggers and lashed tentacles, but Shinji dodged effortlessly, closing the distance as the tentacles burned from his lightning flame. He shouted lightning flame fist and punched the monster's head, making everyone gasp at his strength, while Mikasa thought heroes in novels must be like this. In the system room, officials marveled at his power, and the chairman asked if anyone still opposed making him spot leader, receiving no objections. Suddenly, the place shook, people panicked, and a voice reported that the Earth's spiritual energy had fully recovered, threatening to upend the world. Meanwhile, Shinji stood in the forest, analyzing the situation and noting that the thorn beast must now possess a wood attribute, while Mika had ice, recalling her connection to the place. Suddenly, a surge of blue light erupted from below, flowing upward as if the earth itself was releasing energy, and everyone's eyes widened. Shinji realized the earth's spiritual energy had fully recovered, gusting powerfully with an ice attribute from a huge depression in the ground. He thought back to Mika, remembering she had lacked the strength to fully absorb such energy in her previous life. Mika stared at the depression, awed, and said, "Captain, that's incredible. You made the surrounding spiritual energy explode with a single hit." Shinji instructed her to absorb the ice attribute energy from the cave to grow stronger, and she nodded, ready. Shinji mused that together, they could become even stronger and take revenge for past failures. One of the group pointed out the ice attribute energy matched Mika's own, making it an ideal training spot, and everyone agreed to wait. Later, the group gathered around a table brimming with food, toasting to Mika for advancing from Rumbling Spring level 1 to level 3 in a single effort. Mika smiled, thanking the captain and everyone else. Yushir stepped forward, apologizing for his earlier disrespect, and Shinji reassured him that his courage to defend his comrades mattered more than pride. Yushir, moved to tears, swore to dedicate himself to the captain, but Shinji simply said they would work together as comrades in the same squad. Just then, A booming voice ordered all personnel to evacuate immediately. Soldiers and civilians rushed to clear the area, and Shinji noted that the soldiers were not ordinary. They radiated spiritual energy, clearly cultivators. He thought the chairman should be overseeing the spiritual energy management, but for now, the priority was evacuation. The guard stepped forward, aiming his gun at Shinji and warning him to move away immediately, his tone sharp and unyielding. Yusher flared up, shouting that the guard had no idea who they were dealing with and how strong their captain was. The guard didn't flinch and trained the barrel on Yusher's neck, telling him to back off or die. Yusher ground his teeth, seething at the audacity. Shinji raised a hand calmly and said, "Stop it." 3 hours ago, in a round conference, people debated how to handle the sudden recovery of spiritual energy, noting they were unprepared, and agreed the most urgent task was capturing the escaped mutant dog, with one officer reprimanding lax surveillance but stressing the priority was civilian safety. Kawasaki was assigned the mission, saluting and promising to capture it by tomorrow morning, while the rest were ordered to move to the borders as spiritual energy had fully recovered. Kawasaki, speaking through a walkie-talkie, coordinated the evacuation of the east side, unsure when the mutant dog might appear, and saw Shinji on the screen, who instructed his group not to cause trouble for the military, and they began to leave as Shinji warned that from this afternoon, the world would become extremely dangerous and reminded Mika to continue her training to strengthen her foundation. Kawasaki called out to Shinji, revealing he was a high school mate, and teasingly claimed to be his big brother, prompting smirks from Kaori and farewells from the group as they departed, with Shinji impressed at Kawasaki's promotion to military executive. Kawasaki then explained the situation. Spiritual energy on Earth had recovered, but the mutant dog had escaped and was hiding nearby, so the area was sealed off to protect civilians, making it clear why the military had been dispatched. Shinji saw the mutant dog fail and fall into the trap and realized this was a perfect chance to observe the military's capability, asking to watch, while Kawasaki saw it as an opportunity for Shinji to experience the dangers of the world and instructed a guard to guide him to the safe zone around the hunting ground. The guard reminded Shinji to follow his instructions, and Shinji complied, sitting cross-legged in the safe zone and noting that the soldiers, though armed, had spiritual energy mostly at bubbling spring level 1, appearing quite capable. Suddenly, a soldier monitoring the area shouted that the huge mutant dog had appeared, surrounded by a purple glow, and the squad opened fire, but the attacks barely harmed it as purple energy emitted from its mouth. Tension rose as another soldier was caught in the energy, and Kawasaki shouted that the dog was trying to evolve and had to be stopped immediately to prevent the squad's annihilation. The squad charged but could not get close, being pushed back as the mutant dog evolved drastically, and Kawasaki clenched his teeth, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control. Kawasaki stood before the mutant dog, gritting his teeth as it evolved, already battered from earlier attacks. A soldier behind him shouted for guidance, and Kawasaki barked back that they had no choice but to fight. They couldn't let civilians get hurt, and commanded the special forces to charge. The mutant dog's sheer power swept them aside, sending them flying. Kawasaki's head slammed against the rubble, blood streaming down his face as the dog advanced with small, piercing eyes. He braced himself, thinking he might die, when suddenly Shinji appeared, striking the dog with a surge of lightning. Kawasaki could hardly process what he saw. Shinji warned the beast that attacking his friend would cost it its life, electrocuting the creature and hurling it far away. Kawasaki gasped, realizing Shinji was a cultivator too, but Shinji waved it off, saying they could talk later. The soldiers murmured in awe at his strength, stunned that a single hit could wound a level 4 bubbling spring mutant dog. Levitating, Shinji forged a sharp weapon of light and struck again, forcing the dog to vomit blood. Kawasaki, now supported by his troops, marveled at Shinji's lightning attribute power. The dog lunged at him again, but Shinji infused a knife with both electric and flame energy, cutting it cleanly in half. The soldiers watched in disbelief, commenting on the terrifying potential if he continued absorbing spiritual energy. Kawasaki smirked in admiration, acknowledging Shinji's incredible strength, while Shinji stared at the knife, now reduced to ashes, realizing even military-grade weapons couldn't withstand his lightning flame. Kawasaki rushed forward, asking if he had been hiding his true power all along. Kawasaki nudged Shinji with his elbow, saying he couldn't believe someone so strong had hidden it all this time. Shinji warned him not to move too much with his injuries, then supported him by the shoulder. Kawasaki turned to his soldiers, saying the cleanup was theirs and he needed to talk to Shinji, and they saluted. Later, in a nearby building, the woman asked if Kawasaki's companion was his friend. He replied that they were closer than that. They trusted each other completely. She thought that recruiting someone like him into the military would be a huge boost. She asked if he had been invited to join, and Kawasaki explained he'd already joined the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association. She made a note to inform Lu Jinghu immediately. Meanwhile, Shinji returned home with a burger and a drink, realizing he had forgotten breakfast. The woman on the couch asked about the military operation and his involvement. He shrugged, saying he only got involved because his friend was hurt. She warned that the commander-in-chief's daughter had been calling the chairman non-stop, insisting on meeting him. Shinji raised an eyebrow, asking if this was some matchmaking attempt, and she warned him to be careful for the next few days. Just then, Kawasaki's phone rang. He answered, identifying himself as Fuma Natsuki Kawasaki Sr., and told Shinji he knew a place where intense fire attribute spiritual energy was surging. Shinji's eyes widened. Fire attribute energy could help him strengthen his abilities, and he smirked, already thinking of his next move. It all began when a fireball appeared during a night patrol at the construction site. Workers, suspecting some evil spirit, called for a minimal exorcism, but instead of weakening, the fireball grew larger and more intense, soon engulfing the entire site. The military sealed off the area, yet nothing could contain the flames, which had grown even stronger since the spiritual energy had fully recovered yesterday afternoon. Fuma briefed Shinji while driving, explaining that evacuation zones were expanding to minimize casualties. Shinji asked if the fire was still spreading, and she confirmed it. Then she brought up Lu, hinting at recruiting him. He protested, saying she was only sent to monitor him, but she calmly explained the urgency. With spiritual energy fully recovered, capable cultivators were needed to maintain national security, though most were difficult to manage. Kawasaki had told her about Shinji's conduct and skill, making him ideal to train newcomers. She offered favorable treatment if he agreed, but he declined, insisting his priority was overseeing the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association's personnel. She understood, acknowledging his principled nature. Upon arriving at the site, soldiers warned the crowd to stay back from the dangerous area. Yuto spotted Shinji and questioned his presence, and Shinji shot back, asking why he was there. Yuto teased that Shinji resembled Lin's unborn child, while Lin smirked, blaming him for wasting her chance. Onlookers joked about the quarrel, cheering for the pure love warrior, which annoyed Shinji. Fuma nudged him, asking if he was okay, and he brushed past, calling Yuto a mere rubbernecker as they moved forward. Yuto remained standing, silently rejected, while the crowd laughed. Lin seethed at being humiliated by Fuma's confidence and beauty, vowing to make her pay. Lin noticed Yuto staring and scowled, snapping, "How long do you plan to glare at me?" He rested a hand lightly on her waist, apologizing, saying it's an occupational habit. Lin thought bitterly, without money, you'd have been tossed aside long ago. Meanwhile, Fuma updated Shinji, saying the first insight had grown even stronger, and the warning zone might need expanding. He asked if it was still spreading, and she confirmed, explaining this was the place she mentioned yesterday, where fire-attributed spiritual energy was concentrated, swirling with a blue aura unlike anything around. She clicked her watch, showing a device measuring spiritual energy concentration, and told soldiers to extend the cordon another 10 kilometers. Then someone noticed Shinji moving toward the fire and shouted in alarm. But Fuma realized he wasn't trying to control it, he was going to absorb it. Shinji sat cross-legged in the center of the massive blue flames, letting the energy surge into him. The wind whipped around, forcing others to shield their faces. Fuma marveled at his aura, wondering what level he might reach. Bubbling spring level 4? Maybe even level 6. After a tense moment, the system confirmed he had fully absorbed the fire energy, now reaching level 2, and granted him a bonus, one chance to develop a new fire attribute technique. The notification rang out, announcing that Shinji's fire attribute spiritual energy had reached level 2 and that he could now create a new technique. He stretched out his arm and tapped a symbol on the screen. His eyes widened as the name appeared, Eternal Sacred Flame, a golden fire attribute technique. Because it was his first golden technique, he earned a bonus 10 points. The description explained that with training, he could store fire energy in his body and release it in attacks, covering a wide range. Shinji muttered to himself, satisfied that he had absorbed every last bit of energy, while the wind whipped violently around him. Fuma watched in awe, thinking about the sheer scale of what he had just done. A soldier nearby whispered, "No way, is he the reincarnation of a fire god?" After a while, Shinji walked toward Fuma, smiling relaxedly, and she rushed to check on him. He reassured her that he was fine and thanked her for bringing him there. When she tested the energy with the device, it ignited instantly, and a blast went off behind them. Shinji instinctively shielded Fuma, and she smirked, already plotting how to get closer to someone so formidable. Later, over dinner, she asked about his current level, and he replied probably bubbling spring level 4, soon reaching level 5. She expressed surprise, and he explained that his training methods were unusual, but she waved it off, respecting a cultivator's secrets. She then invited him to reconsider joining the military, promising better treatment, but he declined, saying he wasn't interested. She accepted his answer, noting she would have to report today's events to her superior. That night, Shinji saw a message from the chairman requesting his help on a shadow examination mission, and he agreed to go the next day, while Fuma silently noted the concern. In the morning, Shinji woke to the smell of food, impressed by Fuma's cooking. When he entered the kitchen, he was surprised to see her with dumplings and cheese, and he yelled in disbelief. She calmly explained that his house had been registered as a military secret location, but he shot back, insisting she not act without permission. Later, when he went to her room, it was empty, and a voice from behind informed him she had already left, probably anticipating his arrival. Shinji noticed the file open on the shadow extermination mission and muttered to himself, "Do not tell me she's going in alone." He threw on a jacket and started moving out. Fuma called after him, asking where he was rushing off to, and he replied sharply, "You're in trouble. I need to see the chairman right away." Meanwhile, Fuma was in the water, swimming deeper, thinking she couldn't do anything without Shinji. She held her breath and pushed forward, forming massive crystal shards with her power. Relief washed over her. She had done it, but she hadn't noticed the enormous fish behind her, its teeth the size of Yu's body, looming dangerously close. Shinji tried to attack the massive fish, but it was channeling dark magic. A coil of purple energy wrapped around Fuma, and she clenched her teeth, panicking as the monster tried to drain her spiritual energy. She struggled upward, but the beast struck her with its arm, and she spat blood, sinking into the water, thinking she might be eaten. At that moment, a lightning strike from above revealed Shinji. He dove into the sea, scooped her into his arms, and asked if she was all right. She urged him to retreat, warning the monster was absorbing spiritual energy, and he held her tighter, promising to evacuate her first. Jumping from the water, he delivered her safely, and Fuma took over, carrying her to the hospital while Shinji vowed to handle the monster once she recovered. At the hospital, she lay on oxygen as the chairman clasped Shinji's hand, expressing gratitude, saying without him, his daughter might have died. Shinji replied he was glad he arrived in time and asked about the mission. The chairman explained the shadow mission had been monitored for 6 months. Initially, fewer than 10 people practiced spiritual energy cultivation there, so the monster remained hidden. It was a darkness attribute creature, absorbing surrounding spiritual energy and hiding in the deep sea. With spiritual energy fully recovered recently, it had grown abnormally strong, and immediate action was required to protect civilians. Shinji raised a finger and agreed to help, but said he had one request. At Fuma's house, she was about to take a bath when her grandfather called. She asked why he was sending Shinji on such a dangerous mission. From the phone, he said this was the first trial for both Shinji and the nation. She argued that even a highly skilled team might not handle it, noting the military had dispatched a platoon of bubbling spring level 3 or higher cultivators who still struggled. Her grandfather explained they had no choice and that he had assigned 3 elite members to assist Shinji. With the Earth's spiritual energy recovered, the balance of power was shifting, and failing to act could leave the country vulnerable. The shadow was an A-class danger zone, and subduing it would demonstrate the nation's strength. Fuma worried for Shinji's safety. Meanwhile, Shinji prepared at the car, removing the cover from his sword. Mika, sitting in front, asked why she was the only one coming along and where Ather was. He handed her a file, saying she was the only member among the 4 to reach Bubbling Spring level 3, and it was also a test of her training. Mika promised to do her best and not hold him back. Shinji reassured her, telling her to think of it as training, especially since the military would be providing backup. When they arrived at the port, the driver announced their arrival. Shinji and Mika dismounted, and a man greeted them, noting the young cultivators were impressive. Shinji asked if he was military, and the man introduced himself as Kuraki, warning them not to hold the team back. Mika protested, pointing out he didn't know Shinji's abilities, but a female colleague stepped in, urging cooperation and focus. Another man signaled it was time to move, and Shinji told Mika not to take their words to heart and to focus on the mission. She nodded, and the entire group leaped into the sea, beginning their swim toward the mission. As they swam deeper, Kuraki groaned, feeling his spiritual energy being drained, while the other man warned it was the corrosive effect of the darkness attribute. The girl muttered that staying here too long would shorten their lives, and all around them, purple energy strings twisted and coiled. Mika, grimacing, whispered to the captain that she felt like vomiting, the underwater stench overwhelming. Shinji took a deep breath, lightly tapping her back and forming a protective bubble around her. She looked at him in awe as he explained he had blocked the darkness attribute's effect from that point onward. He thought about the others, hoping they weren't panicking. Kuraki noticed Shinji and Mika surrounded by electric currents, seemingly unaffected, and realized they were using all their spiritual energy to shield themselves, risky if attacked. Suddenly, a massive fish appeared, and Kuraki warned of the monster approaching. Mika raised her palms, releasing blue energy, but Shinji pushed her back, telling her to stay calm and observe. Kuraki leapt, striking the creature and sending it flying, but Mika immediately pointed out it was an illusion. Strings of dark energy shot into the sky, and an enormous octopus-shaped monster emerged, far larger than a human, a bubbling spring level 5. The girl gasped at its size, realizing why their comrades had failed. Determined not to disappoint Shinji, Mika leaped with her icicle dance technique and slashed her frozen sword at the monster, and for a brief moment, it seemed entirely encased in ice. Mika smirked, telling the captain she had done it, but in an instant, the ice shattered and Kuraki shouted for everyone to run. Tentacles lashed out, hitting them midair, and the men vomited blood. Mika maintained her protective layer, but she felt herself sinking deeper, thinking this was useless. Am I going to die here? Just then, Shinji appeared, intercepting the tentacles, telling her she did well but to be more careful. The woman watching noted he had stopped the attack, while the others stared, questioning if his spiritual energy was fire attribute, though unlike any fire they knew. Kuraki gawked at the overwhelming power, wondering if it could really be Shinji's. Standing resolutely before the monster, Shinji said they had lost time with its tentacles, and now it was his turn, eager to test his newly drawn golden technique. He drew his sword from its cover, radiating brilliant gold, and drove it into the monster's head. Kuraki's eyes widened in disbelief, thinking stabbing a bubbling spring level 5 creature with a sword like that would be useless. But Shinji focused, calling out holy fire, immortal technique, and the sword erupted with blazing energy. Within seconds, the entire area was engulfed in flames, and the monster burned violently, leaving Kuraki stunned, whispering in shock at the power he had just witnessed. In the office, the men murmured among themselves, noting that the commander-in-chief's praise of Shinji seemed true, questioning why he was given special treatment without any military training. The chief replied calmly, "Kuraki, I understand your concern, but Shinji's ability cannot be ignored. Other cultivators may seem unreachable, but compared to him, they are like infants. We must bring him to our side and never make him an enemy." Out at sea, Kuraki recalled the chief's words, wondering if such innate talent was truly human, and if properly trained, how terrifying Shinji's growth could be. He glanced at Mika, noting her calm composure even in danger, and her bubbling spring level 3 at such a young age hinted at huge potential. Turning to Kuraki, she asked if he was alright, and when he admitted he was lost in thought, the man beside him laughed it off, suggesting a drink later to settle things. Kuraki swam toward Shinji, apologizing for his earlier rudeness, and Shinji waved it off, telling him there was no need, as he had only worried about everyone. Mika, holding her nose, urged them to leave quickly, and everyone began swimming upward, but Shinji stayed behind. Mika asked why, and he said there was something he needed to check. At that moment, a man introduced himself, Takito Light, a bodyguard for a young lady, handing Shinji a business card and explaining that if she caused trouble, he could be contacted. Shinji recognized the name immediately, Fuminatsuki, the commander-in-chief's daughter, and thought she was the only one who could have such a bodyguard. He asked if the commander needed him and what about his companions, and Light explained that Mika had been escorted home, and Kuraki and the others returned in military vehicles. The purpose of waiting was to meet the commander-in-chief, and Shinji followed him to a car. Inside, Fuwa greeted him, acknowledging he had heard about Shinji from his granddaughter, and invited him to sit. He inquired if it was true that Shinji could store fire power within his body, and Shinji confirmed. Fuwa remarked that with spiritual energy restored, nothing surprises him anymore, and it was fortunate a strong individual like Shinji had emerged independently of military or government support. Shinji smiled modestly, insisting it was just luck. Fuwa nodded, saying, "Not too humble, not arrogant either. You're level-headed, just as my granddaughter judged. Shuji-kun, the world is changing. What was once abnormal is now the norm, making life hard for ordinary people who cannot adapt." Shinji replied calmly, "Don't worry. If anything happens to ordinary people, I won't abandon them." Fuwa continued, "I'm not pressuring you, but I want you to grow fast among all lightning cultivators. The dark attribute is the most dangerous. It corrupts life, turning beings into mindless monsters. Your lightning is best suited to control it. For your own sake and for the country, I want you to train harder and grow stronger." Shinji nodded, "I understand. I will dedicate myself fully to training." Fuwa handed him a phone, explaining it's a secure military executive line, and if he ever needs help, he can call. Shinji accepted it, thanking him, then added, "Actually, there's something I'd like to ask. The weapon the chairman made for me, though I thought it could handle my energy, it didn't." Fuwa examined the sword, realizing it was a treasured weapon of Lu's, and said, "I understand. Leave it to me. I'll prepare stronger swords for you in a few days." Shinji bowed in gratitude. As he dismounted from the car and watched it drive off, he reminded himself not to let his guard down even for a moment. He called Chairman Lu, who answered immediately. Shinji asked what was wrong, and the chairman said urgently, "Shinji, Lu is in trouble." He asked, "What happened?" In the hospital, doctors crowded around, their voices tense and urgent. One shouted that her heart rate was dropping, another told them to stop yelling and focus on absorbing the dark attribute spiritual energy from her body. But someone else argued it was useless, she'd been in a coma too long, and forcibly taking her energy would make it go berserk. Panic spread, and outside the chairman was near tears, muttering that it was all his fault. Shinji arrived, asking if he was all right, and the chairman explained her sudden collapse, blaming the dark attribute energy, which had caused her to doubt herself and act recklessly on the mission. Shinji's system prompted him to touch her for 3 minutes to find a way to save her. Ignoring the protesting doctors who tried to push him away, he stepped forward, holding her hand and commanding the system to search for a solution. The screen flashed with a notification of search initiation, while the doctors shouted, demanding he leave, insisting no one could be saved this way and calling for security. Shinji remained determined, knowing time was critical. The chairman stepped in, giving permission for Shinji to act, asking if anyone had objections. The doctors hesitated, insisting they needed to treat her wounds immediately, but the chairman commanded them to let Shinji try, warning that if he failed, it would be as if they were personally responsible. The doctors stared at him in disbelief, silently questioning who he was to make the chairman speak so decisively. The system finally completed its search and suggested a treatment: grind grand Stardew flower into powder, introduce it into her body to disturb the ice and dark attribute balance, and inject Shinji's lightning attribute spiritual energy to gradually purge the dark attribute, while carefully maintaining the balance. The process would take around 3 hours, and constant contact with her body was required. Shinji told the chairman he needed everyone else to evacuate, explaining that he could cure her but could not guarantee their safety. The doctors protested, but Shinji's electric energy began to pulse around him, and the chairman ordered them to comply. Alone, Shinji infused the Stardew flower into water and guided her to drink it. Her body glowed and trembled, pain coursing through her as he steadied her by the shoulders, promising she would survive. Hours later, she finally opened her eyes, and Shinji, standing close, reminded her not to act so recklessly again. She hesitated, feeling that she must be a burden on him, but Shinji reassured her that she was not. He was strong, yes, but she was far from weak. She reflected that before meeting him, she had thought herself the strongest, even capable of surpassing his father's power. Shinji turned, saying he was going home to rest after a sleepless night, and that tomorrow they would begin rehabilitation training. The next morning, she fought a mutant wolf and defeated it with ease. Shinji, observing silently, evaluated her skill, noting that the wolf had been at the peak of Bubbling Spring level 3, and her effortless victory confirmed she had risen to bubbling spring level 4. She teased him to stop flattering her, insisting she knew her own strength. Bismarck suggested wrapping up, but a sudden booming voice cut through the forest. She asked what it was, and a message appeared, intense dark attribute spiritual energy detected. Shinji said calmly, "This is no ordinary explosion." He sensed a rampage of dark attribute energy deep in the forest. Yuto told Lin he would catch a big fish later and they could have it grilled on skewers, but she snapped rudely that she did not want any of it and walked toward her friend saying she would help too, when a man came from the side asking what was wrong with Lin, and Yuto explained she had been like this since seeing an incredibly beautiful woman a few days ago, making the man laugh and tease him about drawing her. And Yuto admitted she was insanely beautiful, prompting the man to say he was curious and wanted to help. But before that, Koki came and pinched his ear, telling him to help with the tent in silence, and he protested saying she did not know how much he loved her, and as they left, Yuto decided to gather twigs and went deeper into the forest, where he saw a glowing purple flower and remembered the news that the World Union announced Earth had entered an era of spiritual energy recovery, giving opportunities to contact spiritual energy worldwide, and feeling hypnotized by the flower. He shouted that this was his chance to become king, vowed to make Fuji and Shinji regret their actions and kneel before that woman as they did with Lin, then started chewing the flower as an immense surge of energy filled his body. Yuto's whole body turned red, and he felt more sinister than before, when from afar a voice shouted for help as his friends were surrounded by wolves. But with his newfound energy, Yuto slashed through them in one move, asking if they were alright, while Lin warned him there was a whole pack, yet he laughed, calling them nothing but insects, leaving Lin shocked and questioning how humans could possess such power, while others cheered, noting the news fuss about him, and Lin thought a strong man like this suited her perfectly. Meanwhile, Shinji warned of approaching dark attribute spiritual energy, and Yu confirmed feeling it, telling them to hold hands and jump onto a thick tree branch above as a pack of mutant wolves ran below, noticing the wolves' cuts and wounds and realizing they were infected by dark energy. And when Yu suggested reporting to the chairman, Shinji said they needed to investigate first, then jump down, promising not to threaten civilian life, extending his hand to release blue energy that struck the wolves, then told her to move on, and they walked to a campsite, when Yuto suddenly leaped at Shinji, who blocked him with a shield, but Yuto attacked Yu instead, admiring her beauty like the last woman and asking to go for a drink. And when Yu asked why he attacked Shinji, he laughed, saying he taught him a lesson due to their history, while she challenged him about his strength, prompting Shinji to ask if he became a cultivator through an attribute, and Yuto's sinister laugh confirmed it, declaring he was a full-fledged cultivator, dismissing the danger to weaklings, ignoring Shinji's warning that he had attacked the peck earlier, which could have harmed many. And as Shinji decided talking was useless and action was needed, Yuto laughed, saying Shinji had revealed his true colors and he would show him what a real cultivator was. Yuto laughed violently, his whole body radiating and pulsating with a red aura, while Shinji remained calmer, his body glowing with blue energy. Realizing this energy probably put him at bubbling spring level 2, amazed that a single fruit could evolve someone so much in a world where spiritual energy had recovered, and when Yuto tried to attack from behind, Shinji blocked him, prompting Yuto to laugh and admit he had skill, but when Shinji taunted him, Yuto grew furious, shouting "die" as he launched punches and kicks, all blocked or dodged by Shinji, which frustrated him further. And Shinji remarked that Yuto was too weak whether cultivator or not, then struck him in the face, sending him crashing to the ground, leaving Yuto's friends shouting for him, while Lin wondered when Shinji had gotten so strong and regretted breaking up with him, and Shinji ordered their capture and interrogation while Yu agreed to contact the chairman and seal off the mountain, as Yuto fumed at losing Shinji, hearing a voice asking if he hungered for power, and suddenly found himself in a strange place before a throne where a figure sat, shouting for overwhelming power to make Shinji kneel, when the demonic figure struck his forehead with dark energy, painfully absorbed by Yuto as he cried for power, and while hypnotized, Yu appeared commanding him to follow the Cultivation Association, but Yuto woke up emitting a burst of purple dark energy that struck his friends, with Shinji pushing him back and warning him, as Yuto felt demon-like, radiating intense energy and absorbing his friends' energy, leaving them terrified and shouting. And Shinji realizing the commander-in-chief had been right, while Yuto fully transformed into a demon-like figure, declaring he had returned to this world, jumping from bubbling spring level 2 to 4 instantly, prompting Shinji to warn that he was probably no longer human, as a message appeared declaring Junior Dark Attribute Demon Lord detected, with a mission to defeat him for a new spiritual energy attribute slot, and Shinji, recalling his past life, admitted he had never seen a monster like this and had no idea what attacks it might use. Yudo said the quality of these humans' flesh and blood was too poor for him to manifest fully, noting that the electric energy in the two bodies was substantial and if he devoured them he would recover great power, deciding to start with the woman who seemed weaker, and shot an arrow toward you, but Shinji stepped in, his eyes turning yellow as he blocked it with yellow flame energy, prompting the demonized Yudo to acknowledge the block as luck, while Shinji asked who he was and what had happened to Yudo, and the entity said it was too early for humans to know and the only choice was to serve or die, causing Shinji to remark that proper conversation was impossible, and the entity laughed at his defiance, declaring it would show the ultimate darkness, raising its hand as the area swirled with dark energy that formed a circle around Shinji and lifted him, while you, tense, shouted to help and fired blue energy at the dark sphere, which had no effect, and the entity taunted that such attacks could never break through and told him to stop resisting, but from inside the dark energy Shinji's hand emerged, surprising the entity, and he burst through, asking if that was seriously all it had. The entity laughed, calling Shinji a foolish brat and mocking him for thinking he could fight just because he broke the seal of the dark space, and from behind you shouted that you would fight with him, but Shinji told you not to move, saying he only wanted to test his full power, and when you asked what he meant, he clenched both fists as yellow energy surged from him and he pushed his palm at the entity's head, creating a massive blast that sent it flying far away and embedding it in stone, where it complained about being blown away by a weak human, prompting Shinji to taunt it for being scared, yet the entity lashed back, threatening to kill him, slashing with its hand, but Shinji dodged and blocked it with fire energy, leaving the entity furious that one hand blocked its attack without damage, and Shinji remarked that he did not even need full power, disappointing the entity, which clenched its fists, realizing it could not die yet and needed to devour more humans to gain power and revenge, while Shinji charged with full force, electrocuting the entity's nerves and hand, telling it had discarded most of its body to survive, and from behind you asked if he was okay. He replied that part of the monster had escaped and instructed you to contact the chairman immediately, which you acknowledged, and meanwhile in town, due to a cold front, the dews faded and the Metropolitan Emergency Agency issued a heavy rain warning, advising people to stay indoors to avoid a possible major disaster, while a girl walking on the road muttered that it was all his fault for the ruined plans, then heard a strange voice, turned to look, and suddenly found her location changed, realizing she was facing the approaching battle radiating the same energy as the entity, as bats began flying toward her. The girl closed her eyes, but a blue light suddenly struck the bed and hit the ground, and when she looked up, she saw Shinji warning her not to go outside because it was extremely dangerous until the sky cleared, while the sky above was filled with countless beds, and seeing Shinji, she felt herself falling in love with him, as he took out a phone and called, telling you to monitor the situation, explaining that the escaped dark attribute creature had split into countless beds to escape and was absorbing spiritual energy from humans to evolve, noting that some had reached Bubbling Spring Level 2 and were still preying on people, realizing the beds intended to use the townspeople as fuel for evolution, and if all reached Bubbling Spring Level 3 and the monster revived, it would be disastrous, prompting him to think of a solution before that happened, while the beds, with their hidden eyes, planned that if they devoured all humans in the town, they could recover to peak strength, and then properly thank the human before slowly torturing and killing him. The military arrived quickly, all soldiers armed, while online, keyboard warriors posted frantic messages about giant bats crashing into windows, wondering if it was the end of the world, and Fuwa sat with her team complaining that people should just stay home instead of posting, shouting that they should cut off the internet, but a man explained that would cause panic and worse consequences. And when she asked if the military had been deployed, he said it had been 30 minutes, but all roads to Amanami City were blocked by level 3 bats, making a quick breakthrough impossible, leaving her worry for Shinji. While inside a building, Shinji and Yu arrived, and the group greeted him, confirming everyone was alright, as a woman explained that she and Kaori were training when the chairman called, and a man recounted fending off a bat during dinner with his brother, which Shinji told him was fine to roast but not to eat. And at the office, the chairman noted Shinji's presence and suggested starting the military meeting, instructing Fuwa that if her team was ready they should focus on Amanami City, where rescue operations were hindered by numerous mutated bats, and a massive energy reaction had been detected at the civil hall in the southeast, believed to be the source controlling the mutants. As everyone sat down, Shinji noticed Kaori shivering and wondered what was wrong, while an announcement outlined the plan: force entry from the eastern highways, secure a route, launch a large-scale bombardment to subdue the area quickly, and evacuate the city, with Civilization Association members taking a separate route to the Civil Hall to assist. Stressing that the operation must finish within 5 minutes or the entity at the Civil Hall would become uncontrollable, a man checked his watch and asked if there were questions, and the girl raised her hand, asking Commander-in-Chief Fuwa if the bombardment would be delayed if the military couldn't reach the hall on time, to which he replied there would be no delay, warning that if the dark creature evolved, casualties would extend beyond the Civil Hall to the whole city or country, leaving the girl speechless and shivering, and when asked if she had family there, she said yes, wrapping her hand around Kaori and promising to save them. Noting her skills had improved thanks to Shinji's special training, while the man suggested calling her brother to pick them up, but the general said Kaori would have to sit out the operation because swaying could affect mission success, and though Chairman Liu hesitated, Shinji interrupted, pointing out a fatal flaw in Fuwa's plan, explaining that Mayor bombs would not damage the monster since he had seriously wounded it earlier. And when asked for his plan, Shinji said he intended to use the weapon he had requested a few days ago, ready to deploy it against the monster. At the entrance of the tunnel, the team gathered, Fuma stopping her watch and saying she would deliver it to Shinji to protect Amanami City's citizens. The announcement repeated over the comms. All troops were ordered to begin the operation to exterminate the unknown creature in Amanami City, starting from the eastern route entrance and targeting the Civic Hall. A man explained the mission: escort the weapon safely. The operation split among 5 squads, no matter what. For the sake of everyone in the city, the team sprinted into the tunnel, immediately encountering swarms of bats. They fought back, but the bats were powerful, wounding several soldiers. The girl shouted for everyone to follow her, grimacing from her own injuries but determined that they would survive. Darkness enveloped the tunnel, the bats swarming all around. In the middle, Shinji stood, crackling with electric energy, muttering that he would have acted sooner if he'd known it would get this chaotic. Mika called for the team to wait, unleashing an ice spike strike while you combined it with a water dragon surge, freezing their enemies together. You wondered aloud how many bats were in the city, and Mika explained that they absorbed spiritual energy to replicate. If the black hole combined them, their strength would be astronomical. Shinji remained calm, saying they could not beat him in the forest, so even a full merge would fail, and the immediate priority was reaching Mr. Fuwa at the Civic Hall. Finally, a battered group emerged from the tunnel, bruised and compromised, but still moving forward. The team froze as Yuto stepped forward, blocking their path, smirking and saying the beautiful lady belonged to him. Fuma snapped, furious, demanding if he knew how many innocent civilians had died, but he shrugged, saying he didn't care. Trash couldn't survive in this world anyway, and she should feel honored. Enraged, she leaped high and kicked toward his neck, but it barely affected him. He sneered, purple dark energy swirling around him, saying that with their arrival, he could reach full power by devouring them, and that she would become his nourishment. Just then, a bright light erupted, forming an icy shield around Fuma, as a voice warned that their young lady would not be taken, forcing Yuto into a defensive stance. He hissed that judging by the energy he felt, she had already reached bubbling level 5, and consuming her would make him stronger than ever. The light urged Fuma to proceed to the meeting point with Shinji while it held Yuto back. She hesitated, warning to be careful, but he snarled he wouldn't let her go. More icy peaks shot up, blocking her path, as the battlefield around them erupted in chaos. Bats swarmed, soldiers were attacked, and Fuma fired her bullets desperately, noticing some bats had evolved beyond their usual limits. Worry flickered in her mind about whether they could deliver the weapon in time, or if Shinji could even reach them. Suddenly, one of the evolved bats lunged at her, but before it could strike, Shinji appeared in the middle of the fray, eyes blazing, and she felt the air shift as the scene erupted in a burst of energy and blood droplets. Fuma looked at him, worried, asking if he was alright. Shinji gently patted her head, saying that now that he was here, there was nothing to worry about. He asked if she had secured the weapon, and she confirmed, explaining that it was from her grandfather but she didn't know much about it. Shinji revealed a glowing red sword, and she gasped, asking if it was truly that incredible. He nodded, saying it was a weapon of destructive power, and turned toward Kawasaki, telling him to clear the way. Everyone stepped back as Shinji activated the sword's magic fusion, causing it to shimmer red, flames and lightning wrapping around it as he swung in wide arcs, cutting through the bats effortlessly. Kawasaki laughed, impressed as ever, while Fuma cheered, asking if anyone else had been harmed. Shinji nodded toward the ongoing fight, noting that Light was currently engaged with someone named Yuto. Fuma pleaded, urging Shinji to help Light. Shinji's eyes narrowed, realizing that Yuto was dead, the dark creature thought to be gone. Could he have come back to life? Meanwhile, Light struggled as Yuto hovered above, bats swarming him and blocking his vision while leeching his remaining spiritual energy. Some of the bats had already evolved to level 3, forcing Light to form a thick ice shield, but the relentless onslaught cracked it, leaving his hand wounded from Yuto's dark energy. Yuto smirked, teasing Light for keeping his distance, and as Light launched a sharp, arrow-like attack from his eyes, Yuto enveloped himself in purple energy, absorbing it to evolve further. Laughing, he sent a powerful purple strike toward Light, who closed his eyes, apologizing silently to Fuma, but before it could hit, Shinji intercepted. The blast missed him, detonating harmlessly to the side, and he turned to Light, asking if he had spoken. Light, clutching his wound, asked if Fuma was safe. Shinji reassured him, telling him to join Fuma and handle the bats while he dealt with Yuto. Light nodded and moved forward. Now Shinji faced Yuto directly, demanding to know who he really was. Yuto laughed, claiming it was him, but Shinji's expression hardened as he warned Yuto that if he refused to speak, he would finish him without hesitation. Yuto called out, taunting Shinji about his power in the forest, and claiming he would show his full strength. He extended his hand, sending bolts of purple energy toward Shinji, who calmly grasped his sword and slashed the dark energy in half, the strike hitting Yuto. Yuto shouted in shock, but then the sky itself seemed to darken as countless bats appeared, moving as one massive swarm. Even Shinji hesitated, puzzled by the sight. Mika, Yu, and Fuma watched in alarm, sensing the energy radiating from the black cloud. Mika confirmed the bats seemed ordered toward it, and Fuma's readings went off the charts. She realized aloud that if the instruments were accurate, the creature looming above qualified as a super mutant level threat, far beyond normal anomalies, capable of massive destruction. She quickly instructed Yu to contact the chairman for reinforcements while she would call her grandfather, determined not to let Shinji face this alone, and Yu acknowledged, moving to act immediately. Meanwhile, back at the office, a man shouted into his radio, "Captain Light, please respond, Captain Light." Frustration and panic rose as the connection with the second platoon remained dead. "Damn it," he muttered, "these belts must be blocking radio waves too, making communication impossible." The chief's mind raced as he wondered whether Fuma and the others had managed to break through the chaos in Amanami City. The man beside him shouted in alarm, noting that the belts were converging in a single direction, asking what might happen next. Frantically, he called out over the radio, "Captain Light, can you hear me? Respond, please respond." Just then, the second platoon's communication flickered back to life, the radio waves returning as the belts vanished. The man grabbed a phone, calling out, "Captain Light, please report your situation." From the comms, a voice responded saying they had encountered belts that appeared to be bubbling, spring level 2. They had been attacking earlier, but now seemed to be gathering. Kawasaki, listening intently, added that the second and third units were reporting the same. The chief's jaw tightened as he tallied the casualties, realizing the growing threat. Another man approached, saying there was incoming communication from Fuma's grandfather. The chief took the phone, asking Natsuki if she was okay. On the other end, the voice rang out in urgency, "Grandfather, it's terrible. A super mutant level entity was about to appear in Amanami City." The chief's eyes widened. Deputy Commander Fuma confirmed grimly, explaining that the beds had disappeared at once, transferring all absorbed spiritual energy to the mutant at the center of the black cloud. The man near the chief gasped, saying it could not be, Amanami City would be doomed. The mutant was at bubbling level 5 or higher, and without cultivators, there seemed no way to stop it. The chief clenched his teeth, turning to Fuma with guilt and despair, murmuring that he could not apologize, but Fuma's calm voice reassured him, repeating that she understood. Determined, the chief ordered, "Attention everyone, begin preparation for weapons of mass destruction. The super mutant in Amanami City must be stopped at all costs, with no allowance for damage spreading to other cities." A subordinate cautioned him to calm down and consider recruiting Fuma, but the chief insisted, "We are soldiers. We cannot reprioritize citizen safety, and to prevent further damage, sacrifices may be necessary. From the comms, Shinji's voice suddenly rang out, questioning the frantic declarations. The chief's tension broke as he realized Shinji was alive. Shinji chided him lightly for declaring people dead prematurely, and then, scanning the sky, he noted the massive cloud forming like a tornado. Calm but resolute, Shinji declared there was no need for bombs. He would defeat the super mutant himself, no matter its power. The onlookers gasped, stunned by his confidence, questioning whether he was serious against the super mutant. Shinji assured them he was not acting without basis and turned to the commander-in-chief, asking if he would fully cooperate to protect Amanami City and his daughter. The men conferred briefly, then the commander agreed, asking what Shinji required. His only request was straightforward: ensure the military would cover compensation for any damage caused during the battle. Yuto had completely transformed into something demonic, an entity that seemed to siphon the spiritual energy of the world itself. He laughed with a feral thrill, claiming he felt truly alive, having not only revived but evolved to the peak of bubbling spring level 5. Invincibility radiated from him as he boasted, warning Shinji he would regret not being killed back in the forest. With a sudden motion, he hurled a bat toward Shinji, laughing as it soared, but then his expression darkened. From the office, people watched in disbelief, whispering that it couldn't be true. On the battlefield, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck from the sky, slicing a bat cleanly in half, leaving everyone staring in awe. Whispers spread about the legendary lightning attribute, some saying the power before them was more than human. The chief's eyes widened, admitting Shinji had exceeded all expectations. Civilians tried to stay calm as panic and wonder collided, marveling at a human capable of such feats. Mika and Yu exchanged glances, stunned, realizing the young man they had underestimated had been hiding a terrifying power all along, far beyond their bubbling spring level 4. Fuma, focused and composed, thought exactly as she had hoped. The man she had her eye on had proven himself. Above the battlefield, Shinji levitated, his sword extended, his voice calm and steady. Now it's my turn. The entity lashed out with a burst of dark energy, but Shinji blocked it with his blade and executed his Thunder Flame sword technique, mountain and river slash, sending a devastating slash downward. The entity staggered, trying to defend itself with a barrier, but Shinji's strike cut through, hitting the entity squarely in the chest. Pain radiated through the creature, but it didn't relent. Instead, its energy twisted into dark tentacles, all aimed at Shinji. With precise timing, he dodged and sliced each tentacle in half. The entity roared in frustration, shouting that without the sword, it would have finished him long ago. Shinji's eyes narrowed, a wry smile forming as he asked, "Then how about I fight without the sword?" The entity sneered, firing a spiraling, nail-shaped dark energy toward Shinji, but it struck his forehead and somehow deflected harmlessly without him even moving. Shock flashed across its face. "You deflected my strongest attack at Bubbling Spring level 5 peak without a scratch? No, it cannot be. Have you reached an even higher level?" Shinji's eyes narrowed, calm and resolute. "If that was your full power, then your life ends here." He raised his crimson sword, and red lightning surged along the blade, crackling with electrocuted energy. The entity seethed, thinking it could not die here. It would need to absorb more, evolve even further, perhaps to Bubbling Spring level 6, maybe even 7 before revenge. Panic mounting, it spun around and tried to flee, but Shinji's voice cut through the air. "I will not let you escape again." With a swift motion, he unleashed his lightning sword guard heaven-shaking strike, striking the fleeing entity mid-air. The blow seared across its body, flames and energy writhing, and it screamed in disbelief. In a flash, the entity disintegrated into ashes, vanishing completely. Back in the office, cheers erupted. "We did it! We defeated the super mutant! Amanami City is saved!" The relief and joy were overwhelming. The chief quickly regained composure. "Now, let's begin our emergency operations. Provide prompt medical treatment to the injured." Everyone responded with a resounding yes, sir. A few days later, Shinji had settled in with the chairman. The older man smiled warmly. "Shinji, the city was saved thanks to you. The military and we are considering a reward. Anything you desire?" Shinji thought for a moment, then said he had one important request. The chairman raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Tell me." Shinji pointed toward the girl, explaining that for the past few days she and her companion had been staying there, disrupting his daily life, and even affecting Mika's behavior. Could you please have them leave? The chairman chuckled, realizing Shinji was indirectly asking for a bigger house since Fuma would never willingly leave. With a knowing smile, he gave a thumbs up. That's easy, he said. Leave it entirely to me. In the office, the discussion shifted toward Shinji's reward for his success in Amanami City. One officer suggested providing him with spiritual energy resources to make him a super cultivator, comparable to the heroes of Western nations. Another added that turning him into an online influencer could boost his popularity, given his youth and talent. The chief dismissed the influencer idea as frivolous, emphasizing that Shinji was not just a local hero but a genius cultivator the nation could be proud of. He proposed giving Shinji a high-ranking military position to train other cultivators. Before the discussion could continue, General Gento entered, immediately putting everyone on edge. He questioned the idea of rewarding a child, dismissing Shinji's feat as mere luck. The officers countered, pointing out that video records of the mission proved Shinji's skill. Gento, however, scoffed and sat down, refusing further debate. The chairman quickly steered the meeting back on track, asking for other suggestions. One officer noted that Shinji had acted selflessly, so fame and titles were unnecessary. The chairman seized the moment, knowing the others had not yet built a close rapport with Shinji. He revealed that, after speaking directly with Shinji a few days ago, he understood the young cultivator's true desire, a larger house. The presence of the girls had been interfering with his daily life, and even Mika had started acting strangely. Shinji simply wanted enough space to live comfortably with you and the others. This revelation struck the room. Many officers admitted they hadn't considered basic housing as a reward. The chief thought Shinji likely wanted to push you and the others out, but decided not to correct him, especially since Fuma might have feelings for him. Discussion quickly turned to suitable properties in Amanami City. Gento surprised everyone by offering a solution, naming Rokuyo Lake in the villa area of Amanami City's Keio district. This immediately raised concerns. Amanami City was under lockdown, and investigations indicated anomalous creatures there had already reached Bubbling Spring Level 6. The chief, incredulous, asked why Gento was bringing up a potential mission in a meeting meant to decide Shinji's reward, pointing out that the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association had no jurisdiction to involve him in such matters. The tension in the room thickened as everyone waited for Gento's explanation. General Gento explained that his point was simple: if Shinji couldn't handle even that area on his own, he wasn't truly deserving of a reward. The chief, frowning, asked if Gento was objecting to the decision, and Gento clarified he wasn't. He merely wanted to witness firsthand the capabilities of this so-called hero. Later, the chairman handed a file to Shinji, apologizing for the delay and interference in arranging his reward. As Shinji opened it, his eyes widened. The property listed was in Amanami City, Keio District, Rokuyo Lake. He froze for a moment, realizing its value must be at least 100 million yen. The chairman urged him that if he didn't like it, he would stake his life to provide another reward. Shinji waved him off, pressing the file to his chest, saying it was more than enough and that he would gladly accept it. The discussion then turned to military matters, with the officers suggesting that Shinji handle the property along with the platoon. Shinji firmly refused, saying he was more than capable on his own. The chairman cautioned him, pointing out that the previous threat had been Bubbling Spring Level 5, and this new one was Level 6, a significant jump even for him. Shinji calmly responded that he was already at Bubbling Spring Level 7, causing the chairman to shout in astonishment, unable to fully grasp the leap in power he had achieved. The tension was palpable as General Gento asked if Shinji had truly agreed to cooperate with the men in charge, remarking that Green Lake had resisted subjugation for over half a month. Could a mere 20-year-old handle it alone? Gento replied that they would soon see the extent of his abilities, hoping his skills weren't just for show, or he might not make it back alive. The man beside him added that Shinji had probably just been lucky in Amanami City, which explained his absence at the award ceremony, while Gento noted that young people like him needed proper guidance from veterans. A woman seated nearby reminded Gento not to let personal feelings interfere. For Amanami City's sake, the operation had to succeed. Soon, they arrived at the villa, and the woman approached Shinji, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you, I'm Sugita, secretary of the mayor of Amanami City," she said, and Shinji responded in kind. Sugita gestured to the men with her, introducing General Gento and Lieutenant Tsuji, in charge of the mutant subjugation operation. Gento's sharp gaze assessed Shinji, asking if he was the one who had defeated the bubbling spring level 5 creature in Amanami City, and Shinji confirmed. Gento admitted he had expected a more rugged, squad-like figure, but instead faced a surprisingly unassuming young man. Shinji countered with a pointed remark: monsters wouldn't go easy on them just for looking tough, which left Lieutenant Tsuji flustered, prompting Gento to cut him off with a stern warning. If Shinji turned out to be all talk, he wouldn't survive the Green Lake Villa. Shinji reassured them calmly, saying practicality mattered more than bravado, and he wouldn't force anyone if he feared dying himself. Sugita interjected, urging cooperation once inside the villa, and Shinji took the silence as agreement, moving to explain each person's role. He briefed them on the recovered spiritual energy, the sudden appearance of dark attribute energy, and the unidentified creature now occupying the building. According to radar, the mutant inside the villa was bubbling level 5. 6 civilian casualties had occurred in previous operations, but the monster had finally been contained. Shinji opened the mansion gate and said simply, "If the explanation is over, shall we go?" Lieutenant Tsuji was alarmed, whispering that he seemed to charge in without strategy, while Gento admitted they couldn't leave him alone. As Shinji stepped inside, he pondered quietly about the new dark attribute slot he had gained from his last mission, debating whether to choose dark or light. Reflecting that he hadn't been this strong in his previous life, he settled on light, reasoning that healing abilities would be more useful than a dark attribute, especially to prevent situations like with you. From behind, the lieutenant called out, questioning whether he had a plan, and Shinji replied that they couldn't plan without seeing the target first. The air thickened with tension just as a mutant dog suddenly lunged from the side. As they moved forward, General Gento stepped in and struck the mutant wolf instantly, sending it hurtling backward. The lieutenant breathed a sigh of relief, murmuring a thanks to Gento while thinking how unusual it was for such a strong mutant to appear even before entering the villa. If this one was already so powerful, what could possibly be inside? Gento barked at them to stay alert, noting that the wolf was at least bubbling spring level 4. Without hesitation, he launched a fiery punch at the creature, his fist radiating heat and energy like a blazing fireball. The lieutenant's admiration grew. Gento truly wasn't holding back, and the wolf was taking serious damage under his relentless assault. Shinji, meanwhile, stayed relaxed, casually asking if they were done here and suggesting they move into the villa. The lieutenant spun around, fuming, unable to believe his ears, starting to object to Shinji's nonchalance. But before he could finish, Shinji drew his sword and with a single decisive slash cut the wolf clean in half. The general's eyes widened in astonishment, realizing the sheer power of the young man. Shinji shrugged and told them to take their time catching up while he went ahead. Gento thought about how Shinji had dispatched the monsters so easily, far beyond what he could manage, and the lieutenant muttered nervously that they might have angered someone dangerous. Gento agreed immediately. They needed to apologize to Shinji, someone they absolutely could not afford to provoke. As Shinji stepped into the mansion, the darkness pressed in around him. He immediately sensed something was wrong and muttered to himself that 68 people had died, yet no bodies were visible inside. Turning to Gento, he asked if the military had removed the bodies, and Gento replied they hadn't. All their efforts had gone into containing the monster, leaving no time for cleanup. Shinji's expression grew serious, realizing that if that was true, the mutant inside the villa could easily be bubbling spring level 5, or even higher. From the surrounding darkness, eyes glimmering red began to emerge, confirming his suspicion. Gento looked at Shinji, a mix of disbelief and concern on his face. "So, you're saying all the bodies that were eaten by the monster?" Shinji replied calmly, "Mutant creatures don't care about flesh. They feed on spiritual energy. They're not afraid of us. Still, let's be careful. We'll split up. Who's checking the second floor?" Gento nodded, saying they would follow his lead. Shinji started up the stairs, announcing he would take the second floor while the general and lieutenant checked the basement. As he ascended, Shinji opened every door, frowning at the emptiness. Even if the bodies were absorbed, bones should remain. Maybe it's time to test the light attribute he had just acquired. As he activated it, his body glimmered with a brilliant yellow, revealing the dark energy lingering in every corner. He murmured, "Okay, I've found it." Meanwhile, in the basement, the lieutenant shivered, saying he had a bad feeling about the place. Gento ordered caution and readiness, knowing the danger lurking below. Suddenly, a monstrous creature leapt from the shadows, its presence radiating pure threat. Gento commanded an attack, and both he and the lieutenant lunged forward, but the creature's sheer power made Gento stumble. The lieutenant soared above with a wind system strike, hitting the creature, but it barely reacted. He yelled in frustration, "How can its skin be this thick?" Before they could react further, the creature spun its tail, hurling Gento against the wall. The lieutenant shouted in alarm, and Gento growled, "I won't forgive anyone who harms my subordinate." Just as the lieutenant tried to strike again, a beam of light descended from above, piercing the creature's chest. Shinji landed gracefully, teasing, "You're taking quite a while for just one dog, aren't you?" Gento gawked, asking if he really killed that monster in one hit. How strong was he? Shinji shrugged, saying the final boss hasn't even appeared yet. Gento, astonished, asked if this was the monster nesting in Green Lake Villa. Shinji exhaled, "No, this was just an avatar. Let me show you the real situation." Instantly, Shinji glowed brightly, levitating as a relentless radiance filled the space, forcing the general and lieutenant to shield their eyes. A projection revealed the shocking truth: countless creatures were feasting on the bodies of men they had thought were isolated. Gento's mind raced, struggling to comprehend how they had fought so hard against what seemed like just one, when so many existed. The lieutenant shouted in alarm, "There are so many." Shinji said sharply, "What are you talking about? This is the monster's headquarters. It makes sense there are numbers like this." Gento frowned, suggesting a retreat to call for reinforcements. They couldn't advance without overwhelming firepower. The lieutenant agreed reluctantly. But Shinji's patience snapped. His voice rang out, "What did you say? This villa is my reward. If you burn it down, where am I supposed to live? Those weaklings are nothing. Handling them is easy." The tension hung thick in the air as he prepared to take matters into his own hands. Shinji drew his sword with calm precision, declaring he would end this in a single strike. Without hesitation, he spun the blade in a perfect 360-degree arc, generating a roaring tornado of energy. The whirlwind of his slash cut through the room, scattering the mutant creatures and leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Shinji unleashed the snow return to its homeland, combining it with the tornado of the red sword and surging electrocuted energy, cutting through every creature in its path with surgical precision. Limbs and body parts flew with each strike, leaving the general and lieutenant stunned at the sheer speed and power. Within a minute, the entire first floor was cleared. The general hesitated, muttering in disbelief at how swiftly the monsters had been eliminated, and the lieutenant admitted he had expected their own deaths. Shinji calmly corrected them, saying the creatures were merely small fry, and the real monsters still awaited. Gento's mind raced. If these were small fry, what were the ones they had struggled against before? He reminded himself that the last military survey had only registered a level 5 signal. Shinji confirmed that meant the villa's monster had evolved further in the past month. The lieutenant asked if they still stood a chance, and Shinji reassured them that as long as they stayed close and followed his lead, they would be fine. Both saluted and said understood. Moving deeper into the mansion, Shinji cut down every creature that crossed his path, the lieutenant and general watching from behind doors, overwhelmed by the cultivator's overwhelming speed. The general noted that Shinji had subdued the entire first floor in under 10 minutes. Then, sensing a shift in the energy, Shinji darted toward the backyard, alerting the others to follow carefully. There, suspended in the air, hung a strange red egg connected by dark threads, radiating an ominous presence. Shinji braced himself, enveloping his body in a blue energy aura, while the general reminded the lieutenant not to interfere, recognizing that Shinji was focusing his full power on what was clearly the final boss of the villa. The lieutenant muttered, questioning what Shinji planned with such immense power and whether this could really be the villa's true master. The general, his eyes wide, admitted he had seen a sight like this only once before. The lieutenant started to comment, but Gento cut him off, nodding grimly and saying it reminded him of Chairman Kenjo of the Amanami City Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association, a bubbling spring level 6 powerhouse. The tension ratcheted as a red, hand-like appendage emerged creepily from the egg. Shinji, gathering every ounce of his energy, unleashed extreme polarization strike, slashing at the hand, but it barely budged. The creature, a massive bird-like dragon, fully emerged, leaving both the general and lieutenant stunned. Shinji smirked, finally facing an opponent with real backbone. The monster spat a red, viscous fluid toward him, which he narrowly dodged. Spotting an opening, Shinji struck with a special windlight technique to the monster's chest, causing a brief yellow glimmer. The general let out a gasp of excitement, but the monster was far from defeated. As it tried to flee, Shinji pursued relentlessly, glowing with yellow energy as though protected by an unseen force. He combined the lightning flame innovation, mountain river single slash with a crisscross attack, striking the bird monster to the ground. The lieutenant stammered, overwhelmed by the sheer strength, while Gento could only nod, realizing Shinji's true power operated on a whole different level. Shinji's eyes narrowed, his voice firm, declaring the villa belonged to him, and him alone. The monster lay on the ground when Shinji raised his sword, declaring he would send it to the other world in one strike. But before he could finish, a strange light shot down and killed the beast instantly. The general exclaimed in awe, but Shinji quickly noted it wasn't his doing, sensing another presence. He called out for them to reveal themselves, and a portal opened, releasing a man who remarked that perhaps killing it wasn't necessary. The general gasped, addressing him as Kinmo-san. When Shinji asked if they knew each other, Gento explained he was the chairman of the Amanami City Spiritual Energy Association, a bubbling spring level 6 powerhouse. He introduced Shinji as a cultivator from Tenkai City summoned by the military to defeat the monster. Kinmo requested the beast's life be spared for research, which the general immediately agreed to, but Shinji refused, stating no one had the right to decide the creature's fate or control his actions. The general reminded him of Kinmo's support for Amanami City's military, and the lieutenant vouched for his kindness, crediting him with saving many soldiers through his light attribute energy. Kinmo reasoned that while the monster had killed many, it would be better to tame it for humanity's benefit, believing all beings carried spiritual energy that could be influenced by love. Placing his hand on the beast, he made it glow green, and its eyes slowly opened. Shinji suddenly unleashed a surge of lightning energy at the monster, forcing it into a frenzy. Kinmo swiftly formed a green barrier to shield it, blocking the attack while noting to himself that this young man's strength was no joke. Demanding an explanation, he asked if Shinji wished to fight him or stand against humanity. Shinji replied that the monster had killed too many and deserved death, that he took orders from no one, and that since Kinmo's arrival, the creature's spiritual energy had changed. When the general asked what he meant, Shinji pointed his sword at Kinmo, stating the beast feared him more than it feared the blade. Kinmo claimed it was natural from the monster's perspective, as both were human, and explained he had created a birdcage to restrain it. Sheathing his sword, Shinji said he would instead use a special light ability to read the memories in its brain, which visibly unsettled Kinmo. The lieutenant asked if such a power was real, and Shinji explained he had gained it after defeating a monster in Tenkai City, allowing him to directly read brain memories with spiritual energy. Kinmo dismissed it as nonsense, but Shinji walked to the monster, placing his hand on it as yellow energy flared and the creature began to levitate. He murmured about tracing further back to find the method of spiritual energy infusion, yet before he could finish, Kinmo attacked the monster with his light. Smirking as if expecting it, Shinji countered with his sword, and the two clashed fiercely. The general shouted at Kinmo in disbelief, but Kinmo coldly replied that since Shinji had uncovered the truth, he now had no choice but to kill him. Shinji confronted Kinmo, accusing him of raising the bird-like monster in the villa. The general looked baffled, while the lieutenant insisted Kinmo had helped the military in the past. Shinji pressed further, asking how the creature had survived until now, and the general reasoned that during previous subjugations, they had never ventured this deep. Shinji scoffed, questioning if they truly believed that, then pointed out how the monster had been trembling since Kinmo's arrival, suggesting he had done something to it. Kinmo chuckled, noting that while Shinji was sharp, clever people often didn't live long. The general, shocked, admitted Shinji was right. Kinmo then confessed the monster was indeed his, but clarified that he hadn't kept it to harm humans. Rather, he claimed it was for the sake of protecting humanity. The general roared at Kinmo, demanding if he understood how many soldiers had given their lives to reclaim Amanami City. Kinmo coldly replied that their deaths had been quite meaningful, as they allowed the monster to advance from bubbling spring level 3 to level 6 in one leap. The lieutenant shouted in outrage, accusing him of using their comrades' lives for an experiment, but Kinmo dismissed them, saying those of low standing could never grasp the vision of someone like him. He claimed that once fully raised, the creature would be able to defeat other monsters and reduce future soldier casualties, and that studying its evolution could even inspire a new cultivator training method. Proclaiming that the monster was now entirely under his control, he ended the discussion with a chilling remark about sending them to the afterlife, releasing a burst of green energy from his fingertips toward Shinji. A notification appeared before Shinji, detecting a powerful light attribute energy, and asking if he wanted to absorb it. He smirked at the thought that he could take in attacks as well and ordered it to absolutely absorb. Instantly, the incoming strikes from Kinmo were drawn into him, leaving the general and lieutenant tense and confused. They tried to rush toward him, but Kinmo casually sent a wave of green light from his hand, striking them and holding them back, then coldly told them to prepare for their death cries, mocking them for treating him like a villain. As the last of the light attribute was absorbed, Shinji's body flared with bright yellow energy, his light level surging from 2 to an astounding 325. He grinned, remarking that coming here had been worth it. He had gained a house and leveled up. In a swift movement, he floated behind Kinmo, shattering the barriers restraining the general and lieutenant, freeing them. The general exclaimed that Shinji had saved him again, but Shinji told him to stay put and watch as he finished this. Kinmo's teeth clenched in frustration, unable to understand why Shinji could move freely when he should have been trapped within the lightning barrier. Shinji scoffed at the idea that a bubbling spring level 6 small fry could contain him but added that he appreciated the level up, so he'd return the favor with an attack. Charging forward, he swung his sword while Kinmo snarled that a brat like him could never defeat him, summoning pulsating green energy from his hand that lashed out like tentacles toward Shinji. With a single sweeping motion, Shinji unleashed his snow-pierced dragon extinction technique, slicing every strand of the green energy instantly. Kinmo tensed, unable to track his speed or movements, and in the next moment, Shinji appeared right behind him. Realizing too late that he could not dodge, Kinmo took the full brunt of the strike, crashing hard into the ground. Gasping in disbelief at the limit of a bubbling spring level 6, he clutched his injured hand as Shinji's blade had cut deep into it, and with a twisted glare, Kinmo swore that he would kill him. Kinmo's body flared with an intense green glow, as he roared that Shinji had truly angered him and vowed to reveal the full might of the highest bubbling spring, level 6. A glowing spell circle appeared before him, and as Shinji calmly remarked that even his full strength would be nothing more than a desperate struggle, Kinmo thrust his hand forward, unleashing holy retribution. Streams of green energy shot from the circle toward Shinji, but each was cleaved apart with precise swings of his sword. Refusing to relent, Kinmo vaulted high into the air, shouting for Shinji's death as he unleashed a massive green sword slash, only for Shinji to sidestep it completely. Kinmo's eyes darted around in panic, demanding to know where he was, just before Shinji's blade struck his back, hurling him to the ground and forcing blood from his mouth. Even wounded, Kinmo refused to yield, declaring he could not lose no matter the cost. His aura shifted, dark and demonic energy flooding his body as great green wings sprouted from his back. With a furious burst, he launched himself at Shinji with his lightning light technique. Shinji met his charge with a cold challenge, raising his sword and channeling the Swamp Snow Valley Creation Extreme Splitting technique. Their attacks collided in a shattering clash, ending with Kinmo slammed to the ground in defeat. Breathless and stunned, Kinmo muttered disbelief, unable to understand how Shinji's power could surpass the highest limits of bubbling spring level 6. Floating down from the air, Shinji dismissed level 6 as unimpressive. Kinmo trembled at the thought that Shinji might already be beyond him despite the spiritual energy's recent revival. Shinji, unfazed, declared he had plans to attend to and would send him to the afterlife now. Kinmo's desperate thoughts of unfinished ambitions were cut short, as Shinji called him scum and said his twisted spirit would only vanish in death. His blade struck without hesitation, silencing him for good. The lieutenant stared in shock, questioning if he had truly been defeated, while the general marveled at Shinji's power. Landing lightly, Shinji suggested they check on the bird. But as they approached, a sudden flash of green light from Kinmo's remnants struck the creature, prompting the general to grimly state that they should kill it. Shinji calmly replied that the creature was not only a monster but also a victim, then lifted his hand and released a burst of yellow energy toward it. The bird cried out in pain, writhing under the blast, but Shinji reassured it that he was no longer the man he once was and had no intention of causing harm, only to help. Almost instantly, the creature's demeanor shifted. Its form shrank and transformed into a small, adorable owl, leaving the general and lieutenant wide-eyed in disbelief as they shouted in surprise. The tiny owl fluttered onto Shinji's shoulder, and while the lieutenant demanded to know what was going on, Shinji stroked its head, admitting he didn't fully understand either, only that when he tried to heal its light attribute wound, this was the result. The lieutenant then asked if he could use his ability to see the past to explain it, but Shinji confessed that had been a bluff meant to deceive Kinmu. When both officers insisted they had seen images earlier, he clarified that it was merely Kinmu projecting his own memories through light attribute electricity, something he had simply let them believe. Turning away, he said that with this matter settled, they should head back since he had countless tasks ahead, including repairs to the villa. The general, still eyeing the owl, stopped him to ask if he truly intended to keep it as a pet. As Shinji walked on, he remarked that he had no intention of keeping the owl as a pet, though its obedient nature made him consider letting it guard his garden, or perhaps letting the military care for it instead. The general quickly raised his hand, insisting that the military lacked the funds and, more importantly, that after Shinji's efforts to restore it, they couldn't possibly take it away, adding that the creature would likely be happier with him. Shinji told him not to sound so desperate in refusing, saying he had only asked, but the general insisted that taking Mr. Fuji's spirit beast would be far too presumptuous. Nodding, Shinji decided to bring it home and see how his housemates reacted, promising that if they objected, he would hand it over to the military. Later, in the military office, the chief slammed a paper with Kinmo's picture on the desk, demanding to know what was going on with the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association. He accused them of allowing not only a monster to be raised by one of their cultivators but also of letting military soldiers be used as test subjects. The representative before him protested that the commander-in-chief's statement was misleading, claiming ignorance of Kinmo's actions and explaining that the man had been a long-standing top performer of the association, beyond his authority to interfere with. The chief sharply retorted that this hands-off attitude was exactly why the situation had spiraled. The representative insisted he was just an ordinary man with no power over cultivators, unable to risk offending either the association or the military, and pleaded for the chief to consider his position. The chief, voice cold, asked if he could repeat such excuses to the grieving families of the soldiers who had died horribly because of that monster. The man's expression faltered under the weight of the words, and the chief warned that from that day forward, all members of the association would be barred from military cooperation, with noncompliance risking punishment under military law. The representative, now pale, saluted and promised full cooperation with the investigation, only begging that the association's reputation not be completely destroyed, as that could lead to his death at the hands of cultivators. The chief agreed but ordered him to ensure that all cultivators cooperated obediently. Bowing deeply, the man gave a firm acknowledgement. Shinji finally reached home and pushed open the gate, greeted first by Yu asking if he was hurt, then by Fuma warmly welcoming him back. Looking at the two girls, he thought to himself that so this was what it felt like to have a family, and it wasn't bad at all, worth protecting, even if it meant becoming stronger. Fuma snapped him out of his thoughts, asking why he was spacing out, and he replied that he had completed the subjugation mission and even brought back a pet. Yu looked puzzled at the word pet, and when Shinji whistled, the owl swooped down to perch on his head. Both girls lit up at the sight, calling it cute and taking turns petting it, asking where he had found such an adorable creature. Shinji, while opening a can, explained that he had picked it up at the villa where he completed his mission. Yu remarked that surviving in such a place meant it must have had a strong will to live, and Shinji agreed, adding that it was originally a bubbling spring level 6 peak mutant beast. The girls froze, asking him to repeat himself, and when he did, they both recoiled in shock, shouting that a level 6 mutant beast could eat them alive. Yu warned Fuma not to move, saying it could take them both out in one hit. Shinji waved off their fear, explaining that it was docile now and that if it had any hostility, they would have been done for already. He told them they should be more worried about their own training progress. Yu protested that they were doing their best, but progress wasn't so quick, and Fuma added that they couldn't be compared to a genius like him. Shinji stretched, telling them to just keep training, or next time, help might not arrive in time, before heading off to rest. Elsewhere, three men were eating dinner when one mentioned hearing that the strongest cultivator in Amanami City had been killed. Another, drinking, said it was deserved for the number of comrades he had slain. The third questioned how such a high-level cultivator, bubbling spring level 6 peak, could have died, suggesting it must have been a level 7 mutant beast. One dismissed the idea, saying such a beast would threaten them all, and they wondered aloud who could have killed him. All eyes turned to the third man, who whispered that rumors said he had been killed by the strongest cultivator from Amanami City, the same one who had resolved the city's recent crisis. The first two erupted in disbelief, but their chatter was cut short when General Gento walked in, asking what all the fuss was about. They quickly stood and explained it was just shift change and drinks. Gento warned them that any details about the Amanami city cultivator were classified military information and must not be leaked. They saluted, promising to comply, and he dismissed them, silently noting that none of them truly understood Shinji's strength, or how his power could influence the country's standing on an international scale. Fuma sat at her laptop when a notification popped up, announcing that the mysterious and strongest cultivator, Shinji, had successfully reclaimed Amanami City alongside the military. Her eyes lit up with a smile, noting it was trending as expected. The online chatter was all about him, countless praises mixed with a fair share of hate comments. She frowned, thinking how the cultivator from Psycho City sure liked to run their mouth. Yu walked in, asking why she was talking to herself, and Fuma explained that someone calling themselves the King of Psycho was claiming to be a bubbling spring level 7 cultivator, and had challenged Shinji to the military art tournament. Yu, surprised, said it was the first time she had heard of such a thing. Fuma admitted she had just learned about it too, explaining that their grandfather had ordered a nationwide strongest cultivator tournament to inspire cultivators across the country to train harder and protect national security. She declared that Shinji absolutely had to win. Meanwhile, Shinji was busy petting the owl, urging it to eat, saying he had bought expensive feed for it. The owl acted haughty, prompting him to warn that if it preferred small animals, it could go hunt them itself, otherwise it should eat quietly. Yu brought up the martial art tournament, and Shinji turned, saying flatly that he wasn't interested and wouldn't go. He was busy. Both Yu and Fuma pressed him on what could be more important than such a tournament. Annoyed, he shot back that what mattered was restoring the villa in Amanami City as quickly as possible, and that he was determined to move out before his home was completely turned into a hotel for the two of them. In the round meeting at the office, one member questioned why Shinji was not participating, and another echoed the curiosity. Light explained that, according to the deputy commander, Shinji was occupied with renovating his villa and had no interest in the martial art tournament. One man remarked that it was good news since his absence would reduce hassle, but the chief cut in, asking what he meant. The man replied that with fewer participants, any event would be easier to manage. The chief warned him to watch his words, reminding everyone that the tournament was not only a platform for cultivators to compete but also a way to discover new talent, and without a genius like Shinji, they would struggle against cultivators from other countries. Another man pointed out that Shinji's personality made him indifferent to things like honor, and someone else agreed. The chief, displeased, asked if they were simply giving up, saying the country would suffer immeasurable loss without him. A suggestion came to lure him with rare cultivation resources, but it was noted that the military only controlled low-level spirit mutation zones, and since Shinji was likely at bubbling spring level 7, such rewards would not tempt him. The chairman then proposed that Amanami City, which still had dangerous mutation zones beyond Green Lake, could use the tournament as an opportunity, gather the strongest cultivators from across the nation and have them resolve the super mutant level mutation zone there. If successful, the city's full urban function would be restored, and the feat would shock foreign cultivators, since no country had ever cleared such a zone before. The others praised the idea, but one man immediately objected, refusing to take such responsibility and insisting they try in another city, perhaps neighboring Psycho. The chief told him not to get so worked up, saying the proposal was bold but rejecting it outright would get them nowhere, and with thorough safety measures, nothing too severe should happen. The man grew tense, arguing that every time safety measures were promised, things ended in chaos, and begged them not to proceed, claiming he was near retirement and wanted a peaceful life. The chief reminded him that as chairman of the Amanami City Spiritual Energy Cultivator Association, his reluctance over a tournament vital to the country was far from admirable. The man exhaled heavily, conceding that it made no difference what he said, agreeing to proceed and adding that further objections were pointless. The chief thanked the chairman for his proposal and moved on to selecting personnel for the tournament's executive committee. Meanwhile, the chairman quietly considered that this event might bring them closer to uncovering the whereabouts of Shinji's parents. Back at home, Shinji sat on his bed, his entire body enveloped in a radiant yellow aura, eyes glowing with the same fierce light. The energy around him crackled as if he had been struck by a powerful current. With a steady breath, he murmured that he had finally reached bubbling spring level 9 and that just one more step would take him to the next major stage, Iron Meridian. Shinji sits on the sofa reading when the doorbell rings, making him wonder who it could be. Opening the door, he finds Mrs. Sugita, who greets him warmly and says it has been a while. He asks why she's visiting so early, and she explains she came to deliver his reward and get his signature on some necessary paperwork. Inviting her in, he listens as she thanks him and sits on the sofa, laying out documents prepared by the military. She explains they include the ownership transfer and re-registration for the villa, the renovation cost estimate, and an application for additional living expenses, assuring him that once he signs, they will handle the rest. He thanks her while reading through the papers, but she adds there is another important matter she wishes to discuss. He guesses it's about the military tournament, and she admits it is. He asks for details, explaining he hadn't paid much attention when you and the others mentioned it before. She tells him the venue has been decided, the super mutant level anomaly in Amanami. Surprised, he questions if Amanami is really that dangerous. She explains that the city sits at the intersection of spiritual veins, and since the recovery of spiritual energy, it has been oversaturated, creating numerous hazardous anomalies. Hearing this, he remarks that it explains the many problems in the city. She agrees, saying that restoring Amanami's urban function would be great news for cultivators nationwide. According to their information, the super mutant anomaly contains extremely pure lightning-attributed spiritual energy. He reacts to the mention of lightning, and she confirms that the concentration is said to be very high, adding that all the details are in the documents. Realizing they are preparing him meticulously to join the tournament, he remarks as much, but she quickly tells him not to misunderstand. He cuts her off, saying there's no need to be tense, and that he will decide after reviewing the documents. She stands, thanking him and telling him to contact them anytime if he has questions. Shinji arrives carrying a meal and cheerfully calls out that it's time to eat. Fumo shuffles and wearing a nightdress, complaining about being sleepy, while Yu follows, responding that she's coming. As they sit, he opens the meal and mentions that the documents from the military about the martial arts tournament arrived that morning, along with material on the rewards for their last mission. When both glance at the papers, Fumo brightens and wonders aloud if her grandfather might have given them a military rank or something similar. Shinji replies it's nothing so extravagant, just paperwork for a villa and an estimate for the renovation costs. Fumo pouts, calling her grandfather stingy and saying she'll ask him for more land, but he tells her to forget it, wash her face, and eat. Yu silently examines the documents, and one in particular catches her eye. She wonders if it could be related to the anomaly where her parents vanished, questioning whether the military is deliberately withholding information, and for what reason. As Shinji drags Fumo toward the washroom, he notices Yu's interest but thinks it's better if she doesn't get involved. Later, in the gallery, he studies the document that details past explorations of the mutant-level anomaly known as the Thunder Maze. It records that after 4 expeditions, the search team, Hemi Wataru and Hemi Yakina, vanished on the 5th day of a 7-day mission. Yu, their daughter, became the adopted child of Lu Jinghu and is now a spiritual energy cultivator. Shinji calls Mrs. Sugita to say he's decided to go to the anomaly. She thanks him, but as he looks toward the sky, he says he's unhappy with the military's approach. When she asks why, he accuses them of betting that he wouldn't ignore the fact that Yu's parents are connected to the anomaly. She denies it, but he says he can't believe her words. She promises to relay his opinion to the higher-ups, but he warns her to tell them this is the first and last time they use such a tactic, or he may change his mind. She agrees to pass his words along exactly. Hanging up, he walks to the hall where Yu sleeps on the sofa, a notebook open on the table beside her. Gently placing a blanket over her, he thinks to himself that he will definitely find her parents. As Shinji steps out of the car fully dressed, the guards around him grow excited, calling out that Mr. Shinji has arrived and urging one another to welcome him quickly. They all bow in unison before him. Feeling a little shy, he tells them to stop, admitting he is not used to such treatment. The head guard laughs and replies that he should not be modest, for it is the least they can do. He reminds him that if Shinji had not taken down the monster back then, countless casualties might have occurred. Shinji answers that it was nothing, insisting he only did what needed to be done. The man pushes further, asking if he realizes the impact the Kinmochi incident had on the military, adding that everyone here respects him deeply. Another guard chimes in, saying he heard Shinji defeated Kinmochi with a single blow and asks if that is really true. Placing a hand on his chin, Shinji replies that while Kinmochi was certainly a tricky opponent, he was not overwhelmingly strong. The guards cheer happily, raising their hands and exclaiming that Shinji is just as amazing as expected. Shinji looks bewildered, urging them to stop crowding him and to disperse. From the car, a girl calls out to him, advising that he should probably get used to this sooner rather than later, since he will be facing situations like this many more times ahead. He glances at her and says it feels as though he has become some kind of rare collectible. As he starts walking, he asks General Gento if he knows where Chairman Yanagi is, explaining that he has something important to discuss. Gento responds politely, telling him to follow. They proceed inside one of the military tents where Chairman Yanagi is present, holding a paper and remarking to himself that this particular singularity involves far too many unknown dangers, so participants must be vetted thoroughly. At that moment, Shinji approaches and greets him, saying it has been some time. Chairman looks toward Shinji and invites him to sit, asking what he can do for him. As Shinji takes a seat, he mentions the upcoming singularity and explains that he heard from Mr. Sugita it was the chairman who arranged it. The chairman admits it, saying he understands Shinji may not be pleased but insists there was no other choice. He explains that while Yui behaves as if everything is normal during the day, she often suffers at night. Before meeting Shinji, he had hoped to rescue Yui's parents himself, relying on the military and his own resources. But on 5 separate attempts the units he led not only failed to achieve results, but also suffered heavy casualties. He says he must participate in the martial arts tournament to serve as an inspiration for the other practitioners and, if possible, also hopes Shinji can find Yui's parents. He apologizes for forcing this on him, takes full responsibility, and asks that Yui not be blamed, since she knows nothing about it. While saying this, the chairman bows slightly. Shinji exhales deeply and tells him that if this is the case, he should come to him directly next time rather than taking indirect approaches. The chairman asks if by directly he means something more, but Shinji cuts him off, saying that he and Yui are friends, and friends help each other with no reason needed. The chairman's eyes widen in surprise, and he declares that he owes Shinji one. Soon after, General Gento stands on stage and announces to the crowd, welcoming everyone to the martial arts tournament. He says it is his hope that through this competition the participants will gauge their own abilities and find the motivation for even greater achievements. He begins explaining the important details regarding the singularity for this event, stating that the designated stage is a singularity in Asami City rated at the super mutant level. He describes it as lying at the intersection of a powerful ley line and containing immense spiritual energy of the lightning element, which makes it extremely dangerous. As the announcement ends, a boy approaches Shinji, asking if he is Shinji and then introducing himself as Shu Sumida from Fuyutsu City. Shinji shakes his hand and greets him politely. Shu smirks with a puzzled expression, remarking that he is surprised since he never expected the legendary Sword Saint Shinji to be such an approachable person. Shinji, however, is caught off guard and left mesmerized by being called the Sword Saint. The boy continues, explaining that the title of Sword Saint comes from the legend that Shinji defeated Kenmochi in a single strike, saying it has become the talk of the town in Fuyutsu City. He asks if Shinji has really not heard about it. Shinji thinks to himself that he wishes this would stop already, then asks aloud if Shu needs something from him. Shu remembers and quickly suggests that they stick together once inside the singularity. The girl beside Shinji reacts with surprise, asking if he really wants to team up with them. Shinji questions his motive, asking if the Fuyutsu City Cultivators Association sent him to do something. Leaning closer, Shu whispers in his ear that it would be bad if word spread, so he asks for discretion. He admits that technically he was sent by the Fuyutsu City Spiritual Cultivators Association, but only to fill a quota, since he does not actually possess any significant power. Shinji responds in disbelief, asking how someone can claim to be a cultivator yet admit to having no strength, adding that showing up just to fill a spot would be humiliating. Shrugging, Shu replies that it is not humiliating at all, since those in charge do not care about things like that. As long as the roster is full, they are satisfied, and people like him, who are not suited for this, still get assigned if they simply look the part. Shinji acknowledges this, remarking that the Fuyutsu City Spiritual Cultivators Association is quite an unusual organization. Shu grins awkwardly and admits he is not amazing at all, explaining that he simply does not want to die. He says the singularity is dangerous even for veterans, and for a novice like him, entering would mean certain death. Shinji asks if that is the reason he wants to stay close, and the boy pleads, saying Shinji is strong and with him, there may be a chance of survival. Fuma scorns him, calling him a coward and saying it is disgraceful to have someone like that among the participants. Yui cautions Fuma not to be harsh, especially in front of him, but Fuma insists that if he does not say it directly, he would appear timid himself. He tells Shu that as long as he promises not to slow them down, it may be acceptable. Shu quickly raises his hand as though taking an oath, swearing that he will not get in the way, will follow orders precisely, and will not become a burden. At that moment, another girl approaches Shinji, addressing him as captain and suggesting that perhaps they should let Shu join. She warns that if he comes along, he must not act selfishly or recklessly. Grateful, Shu thanks Shinji and the girls, promising once more that he will be careful and cause no trouble. Suddenly, a booming voice erupts from behind, and a crimson tear begins forming in the air. The general's voice rings out, declaring the commencement of the first annual martial arts tournament. All the participants leap into the rift and land in a barren expanse that resembles a desert, surrounded by enormous brown mountains they must descend. Fuma looks around in disbelief, saying he thought Asami City was supposed to be a major city and questions why it looks this way, asking if it is because of the super mutant level singularity. Yui explains that mutant beasts inside a singularity can alter the very landscape itself, and the ones inhabiting this place seem to prefer such an environment. She then asks Captain Fuji what their next step should be. Before anyone can respond, the ground trembles violently. Shu bends down in fear, shouting and begging for help. Shinji warns everyone to stay alert, reminding them that anything can happen here and they must not lower their guard for even an instant. A horde of monstrous creatures emerges, advancing quickly toward the participants. Shinji immediately commands everyone to prepare for battle. Just then, a massive surge of flame appears, forming a fiery illusion that annihilates the approaching creatures. Shinji and Fuji stare in confusion, wondering who unleashed such power. A man holding a huge red sword floats above the ground, smirking as he asks if Shinji is the one before him. Shinji demands to know who he is. Resting the blade on his shoulder, the man introduces himself as Kao Hazumi, the strongest cultivator from Saikyo City, and says he left a message on the board a few days earlier. Fuma stares in shock and exclaims that he must be the famous king of Saikyo. Hazumi replies that if Shinji read his comment, this will save them time, since he has come here to challenge him. Shinji turns away, saying that if all he came for was a pointless challenge, he has no time to waste on it, and should leave. Hazumi's expression darkens with anger, and he scoffs in disappointment, claiming the story about Shinji defeating Kenmochi in a single strike must have been nothing more than military propaganda. Hazumi scoffs, telling Shinji to polish his skills more, and says that when he is truly ready for a challenge, he will accept it any time. With that, he vanishes in a flash of light. Fuma, furious, shouts after him, declaring that if Hazumi talks like that, then he himself will fight him. Shinji quickly calms him, saying there is no need to engage since the situation here already demands their focus. Shu timidly raises a finger and asks if he may add something, explaining that he happened to sit next to Hazumi on the flight over and the man did not utter a single word the entire trip, making the silence unbearable. Shinji looks back with little concern, thinking that he is not bothered by Hazumi, and instead directs everyone's attention to the mountain ahead, asking if they are ready to move. As they prepare, he silently wishes for Yui's parents to be safe. They begin advancing by gliding down toward the ground, and Shinji notices a cave-like opening below. Deciding they should investigate, he leads the group to land there. Upon entering, the cave glows faintly red as though touched by fire. Yui observes the scorched walls and remarks that the marks are signs of a fire element mutant beast. Shinji agrees and suggests they explore further. Venturing deeper, they soon hear a rumbling roar, confirming their suspicion. Before them stands a massive beast, and nearby a group of exhausted fighters struggles desperately to hold it back. The beast bellows and opens its mouth, unleashing a fireball as the people scatter in fear. Spotting Shinji, they cry out in relief, declaring that with him there, they will surely survive. Assessing the situation, Shinji notes that this beast is a spirit spring, class fire monster, and decides it will serve as a perfect trial for Yui and Mika. He calls out that since both specialize in ice techniques, this opponent will be ideal for their real combat experience, asking if they can handle it. Both answer with determination and leap forward. The beast immediately spews a blazing fireball at them, but the girls conjure ice barriers to block the blast. Yui counters by springing backward, then strikes with icy thorn projectiles at the beast's back. Roaring furiously, the beast swings its massive tail toward her, but she counters with a frozen flare, layering intersecting ice formations that slice into its body. At the same moment, Mika summons a towering ice spear and drives it straight into the beast's chest. With a thunderous crack, the creature shatters into frozen fragments. The surrounding people erupt in praise, marveling that it is as if goddesses themselves descended before them. Shinji feels satisfied, thinking it is good that others receive recognition instead of only him. His attention then shifts to the glittering remains, where he spots a fiery crystal lodged within the beast's broken body. Realizing it is a fire element crystal, he thinks that with it, Fuma could become even stronger. As he leaps toward the crystal, a voice suddenly calls from behind, warning him to stop, declaring that the fire crystal belongs to someone else. Shinji turns swiftly to see who has spoken. And it turns out to be the same arrogant figure, Hazumi. Shinji narrows his eyes and mutters that it is him again. Hazumi smirks and demands that the crystal be handed over, warning that refusal will leave no mercy. The exhausted fighters nearby flare with anger, shouting at him, asking who he thinks he is. They accuse him of hiding while the rest fought desperately, only to appear the instant the crystal emerged, acting as if he were someone important when in truth he is nothing but worthless. Hazumi's face twists in rage as he roars at them to be silent, and swings his blade, unleashing his technique, Flame Slash. A torrent of fire tears across the cave, forcing everyone to scatter as the ground erupts, leaving a massive depression in the stone. Shock ripples through the onlookers as they realize his power is overwhelming and admit they are hopelessly outmatched. With his sword extended, Hazumi exudes murderous intent and declares that only those prepared to die should step forward. Laughing, he mocks them, saying he expected more of a fight, but it seems every last one of them has already lost their nerve. Claiming the fire element crystal as his own, he demands if anyone's still objects. Shinji steps forward without hesitation and calmly replies that he does. Hazumi whirls around in disbelief, recognizing him as the one from earlier and scoffing that now he suddenly dares to talk back. Shinji answers evenly that he had hoped to avoid needless conflict, but if Hazumi insists, then so be it. In an instant, Shinji leaps high into the air, electricity crackling fiercely around his fist. Channeling the energy, he calls out his technique, Flame Imperial Fist, and drives the electrified strike straight into Hazumi's abdomen with devastating force. Hazumi crashes to the ground, coughing up blood, his abdomen torn and bloody from the devastating strike. The onlookers are stunned that Shinji managed to drop him with just a single blow. Yet Hazumi, furious beyond control, rises with a roar, vowing to kill him. His entire body ignites, radiating with a blazing yellow fire until he is fully engulfed, his voice echoing through the cave as the sheer heat forces everyone to shield their faces. Panic spreads as they realize what is happening. He has drawn on the cave's saturation of fire element spiritual energy, which amplifies his power. Since he himself is a fire element user, within this environment he becomes nearly invincible. Shu gasps in fear, wondering aloud if Shinji will be alright, but Fuma reassures him firmly that no one has ever been capable of defeating Mr. Shinji. Standing tall amidst the flames, Hazumi laughs manically, declaring that in this cavern overflowing with fire energy he is practically a god. Shinji stares him down coldly and retorts that he dares to act high and mighty only because he has climbed to Spirit Despairing level 7. Hazumi's rage intensifies, his teeth grinding as he shouts for Shinji to shut up and die, hurling a massive wave of fire at him. But before the attack can land, Shinji calmly draws his sword, scoffing that Hazumi is weak, and unleashes his own technique, Lightning Flame Slash. Shinji's entire body crackles with blue electricity that surges into his sword as he slashes forward, his strike cleaving through Hazumi's wave of fire and continuing toward him. Hazumi barely manages to dodge, but the blade still slices into his arm, severing it. He collapses to the ground screaming about his arm. Shinji strides toward him with steady steps, telling him this is what happens when one swings a sword recklessly, ignorant of their own limits, and asks if he truly believes someone like him could ever defeat him. Pointing his sword down at Hazumi, Shinji warns that he will spare his life today only out of respect for the military's reputation, but if they meet again, there will be no mercy. Hazumi, still trembling with pain, quickly agrees and claims he will never speak to him that way again, yet inside he curses bitterly, vowing to repay Shinji for this humiliation. Around them, the people erupt in awe, marveling that Shinji defeated Hazumi in just one decisive blow. They whisper that Hazumi had been at the very peak of Spirit Spring level 7, a point where he was thought to be nearly invincible, yet Shinji crushed him with ease, proving himself like one chosen by the heavens. Shu runs up in excitement, calling Shinji his hero, while Mika praises him as their captain and even Fuma acknowledges his strength. Shinji then retrieves the fire element crystal from the beast's remains and offers it to Fuma, saying that once they return, she should absorb its spiritual energy. She hesitates, asking if he is sure since he too is a fire element user. He assures her it will make little difference for him, so it is better she takes it. Overcome with gratitude, she kisses him lightly and tells him he is always so kind, leaving him blushing as he turns away toward Yui. In a calm but firm voice, he asks if she remembers the true reason they came here. She guesses it is for the martial arts tournament, but he shakes his head, saying he cares nothing for that. His only purpose here is to find her parents, words that strike her deeply. Shinji turns to Yui, telling her not to be so shocked, and explains that he only noticed her parents' names in the mission documents. She asks if he was the one who removed the missing pages, and he admits he did, worried she might get too fixated. He reveals those pages said her parents had entered this singularity searching for something when she was still a child, and this was the last place they reached. Hoping for a clue, he asks if she remembers anything they might have told her before parting. She lowers her gaze and replies sadly that she was too young to recall, and if not for the chairman giving her a photograph, she might have even forgotten their faces. He places a reassuring hand on her shoulder, promising he will find them. She thanks him but warns of the singularity's danger. Looking down with quiet determination, he says not to worry, that no matter what lurks inside, he will defeat it. He then turns to Fuma, instructing her and the others to stay while he takes Yui deeper inside. Concerned, she questions if he really intends to go with only Yui, but he cuts her off, brushing it aside as nothing to worry about. Turning to Shu, he asks if he wants to join, but Shu quickly raises his hands and refuses, admitting he has no desire to walk willingly into danger. Smirking, Shinji says fine, then charges him with protecting Fuma and Mika, warning that if anything happens to them, he will hold him responsible. Shu protests, reminding him he is only a weakling dragged along to fill the numbers, but Shinji ignores him and calls Yui to follow. The two head deeper into the cave, where the atmosphere shifts into an eerie blue glow. Over his shoulder, he tells her to relax and not be nervous. As they move forward, their eyes fall upon a massive blue flame burning in the cavern's center. Shocked, Yui asks what it could be, and just then a mechanical announcement echoes through the air, detecting a rare fire element spiritual energy. The purification lotus flame has appeared. Shinji thinks that this is a stroke of luck and can hardly believe such a high-level, rare spiritual energy has appeared. He jumps down toward it, and tells Yui that he will check it out for a moment, and asks her to wait, and she agrees. As he descends, he notices the flame gives off no smoke and feels no heat, and he decides to see how powerful it really is. An announcement reports that his fire attribute spiritual energy experience increases by 154, and that fire attribute energy experience increases by 305, and as he approaches the flame, his fire attribute begins to rise. Suddenly, huge sharks burst from the sea toward him, and Yui notices and urgently warns him to watch out before leaping down to drive her sword into a shark's eye and cut it, sending one beast crashing to the ground. She then asks if he is all right, and he explains that it will take a few minutes to absorb the spiritual energy, and asks if she can hold them off while his body levitates, wrapped in a blue flame. She vows that he can count on her and will not let anything near him. But a green, half-snake, half-crocodile creature appears behind her and lunges. She dodges so the creature slams into the ground, then drives an ice thorn like a spear into its head. The creature explodes with rage, opening its mouth to spew green, clearly venomous vomit that she scarcely avoids as droplets scatter, then lashes its tail at her. Her barrier shatters and the tail strikes her, forcing her to the ground where she spits blood and trembles, unable to move. The creature hovers above, poised to attack, when the blue energy strikes it and it collapses, revealing Shinji levitating with his body surrounded by that same blue flame, and he warns that anyone who dares touch his friend will die, cutting a cool, deadly figure as he protects her. Shinji hovers in the air and declares that a mere beast has no right to defy him, yet the creature is not finished and rises again with a furious roar. He does not relent, swinging his sword to slice clean through its tail as it howls, then grips the weapon firmly, and remarks that playtime is ending and now it is time to test the true strength of the purifying lotus flame. With a slash, his blade releases a blue strike, a purifying lotus inhaling strike, and the creature trembles under the surging energy before being blown backward, blood covering its body until at last it is cut in half and defeated. Shinji rushes to Yui's side, helping her up and asking if she is all right, and she admits she would not have survived without him. He brushes it off, saying such a lizard is nothing, but warns her to stay cautious of surprise attacks, while she wipes blood from her face and agrees. Before they can recover, more unsettling sounds rise, echoing from unseen creatures, and Shinji comments that the last boss has finally arrived. From the water, a massive dragon ascends, announcing that it has at last been freed from the seal that bound it at the bottom of the lake. Yui stares in disbelief, exclaiming that there is a dragon inside this singularity and that it can speak, and the dragon calmly responds that it is hardly strange for a spirit spring level 9 to know the human tongue. Shinji senses the dangerous aura it radiates, and decides it may be wiser to speak first, so he asks if it created this singularity, to which the dragon answers that it was not made by him but rather made for him. Yui questions what he means by that, and the dragon begins to explain that over 10 years ago, he had been in this very lake, absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The dragon explains that while training to surpass its physical limits and reach greater heights, 2 humans intruded, joined forces, defeated it, sealed it at the bottom of the lake, and even attempted to absorb its power. Shinji asks if it remembers what they looked like or what became of them, and the dragon grows bitter, recalling that the man was named Wataru and the woman something like Yakaina. Yui's eyes widen as she mutters in shock that those were her parents, and the dragon catches her words, laughing cruelly at the irony that the one who freed him is the daughter of the woman who sealed him, remarking that perhaps he should be thankful. Shinji points out that despite claiming gratitude, the dragon still intends to kill them, and the beast begins to ascend, proclaiming that the law of the jungle dictates the weak are nothing more than food for the strong and that Yui must pay for her parents' deeds. Terrified, Yui hesitates, and Shinji shouts for her to run, but she refuses, saying she cannot abandon him and must also learn the truth about her parents. The dragon opens its jaws and warns they cannot escape before unleashing a storm of electrified blue fire, which Shinji cuts apart with his sword. Glancing back over his shoulder, he tells Yui not to push herself since this is not an opponent she can handle and insists she leave the dragon to him. She protests that she cannot possibly let him face it alone, but the dragon sneers that their determination is touching though futile, for neither will leave this place alive. Shinji remains firm, telling Yui to calm down and search the area for any traces her parents might have left behind, and though she lowers her gaze and questions the idea of traces, he orders her again to go. She bites her lip in frustration but agrees, turning to retreat, yet the dragon roars angrily and lashes its tail at her. Shinji intercepts, blocking the strike with his sword and declaring that he is the dragon's opponent, calling it the Azure Dragon. Yu runs deeper into the cave and freezes when she finds a huge crystal before her. Breathing hard, she wonders aloud what it is and then sees a man and woman trapped inside, her eyes widening as she realizes they are her parents and vows to save them immediately, clawing at the crystal and even firing her gaze into it. But despite repeated attempts, nothing breaks and she collapses to her knees in tears, asking why this has happened. Elsewhere, the dragon declares that avenging itself on them is only the first step and beats its wings to summon a massive tornado. Shinji lunges forward and extends his sword to slice the vortex in half, warning the beast that it cannot kill him, and the dragon only laughs, admiring his backbone and promising to end things quickly before spewing a bolt of blinding light. Shinji channels the blue energy around him and meets the bolt with a recut of his strike, the two attacks clashing in a colossal explosion that fills the air with smoke, and when the dust clears he taunts the dragon, questioning whether this is truly the peak of a spirit spring level 9's power. The dragon flies into fury, insisting the blow could not have been blocked if it had used 80% of its strength, while Shinji offers one last chance and dares it to give everything or forfeit its life, and the dragon answers by ascending, telling him to be ready to accept the consequences of his words. The dragon roars for Shinji to try and withstand its full power, leaping high and unleashing its dragon breath while shouting that the human will regret being caught in the midst of its raging fire. But though the breath is immense and destructive, Shinji treats it as nothing and coolly asks if that is all it has. He springs up toward the dragon's head and drives his thunder flame into its wing, drawing a furious cry as the beast curses that without Shinji's sword he would have been reduced to ashes long ago. Shinji then smirks and proposes they fight without a sword, tossing his blade aside, and the dragon catches it in disbelief, demanding to know what he means, while Shinji repeats his challenge to battle without it. Enraged, the dragon vows that this time he is finished and fires a relentless demon dragon wave, breath after breath surging toward Shinji. Cloaked in blue energy, Shinji welcomes the attack and meets it barehanded, the clash creating a massive explosion that rebounds the strike onto the dragon itself. He remarks that since both of them are Spirit Spring level 9, it is not so strange he can stop such a move with his hands, and tells the dragon it is nothing but a relic of the past while declaring the land his own. promising to strike now that its special techniques are exhausted. Terrified, the dragon reels back, refusing to accept death after finally attaining Spirit Spring level 9 and being just one step away from the Iron Vein realm. But Shinji calls out that it cannot escape and retrieves his blade, transforming the red sword into a blazing blue. He unleashes the True Thunder Flame Extreme Slash that cleaves into the dragon's body, forcing it to shriek in agony before barely managing to escape the battlefield, fleeing wounded into the distance. After felling the dragon, Shinji moves quickly to Yui and places a hand on her shoulder, asking her to lead him to the crystal. She guides him and he studies the seal with a bad feeling, then opens his system and orders an analysis of the spell, whereupon the system reports it is currently analyzing and then announces that the energy type is curse and that absorbing it requires evolution to the Iron Vein realm. He notes that as he stands now he cannot break the seal head-on and decides to try from below, driving his sword into the ground while Yui asks what he intends, and he smirks over his shoulder and says he will dig the crystal out, then commands a destruction slash. Blue energy flows along his blade into the earth, splitting the ground as it pours through the cracks, and the crystal finally reveals its full form. He acknowledges the reveal and tells her he will proceed, while she asks what he plans next. Nearby, the wounded dragon still flies, furious at the human who dared to wound it, and vowing vengeance. And on the ground the team remarks on Shinji's strength, one comparing the last strike favorably to a man called Huzumi and another warning that Huzumi might still be nearby, which earns a scoff that the fellow is all talk. Unseen by most, Huzumi sits with a severed hand, insisting to himself that if his arm had not been cut he would have finished them, and at that moment the dragon returns and unleashes another blast of dragon breath. Panic sweeps through the group as the dragon returns, and everyone yells that a dragon has appeared and urges caution while calling on each other to gather strength and strike together. They unite, unleashing a barrage of techniques: flame slashes, freezing slashes, a water dragon blast, yet the beast only laughs, exalting this display as the true power and the mark of a ruler, and despite their combined assault they prove pitifully weak before it. Huzumi decides he cannot win a straight fight and resolves to flee instead, thinking he must escape to survive. But the dragon spots him trying to run and rips at him with its claws, sending him crashing to the earth where it pins him down and asks whether he truly believes he can escape its rule. Desperate, he begs for his life and offers to do anything, and when the dragon scoffs that a one-armed weakling can do nothing for it, he vows to help kill the others. Shock ripples through the group as they accuse him of betrayal and curse his name, calling him a traitor and wishing Shinji had finished him, yet the dragon says that alone is no reason to spare him and demands proof of his usefulness. Huzumi pledges to free the beast from the singularity, claiming he can use the singularity's transfer point to break the barrier enclosing the place so the dragon can return to the outside world, and the dragon's body begins to swirl with blue energy as it considers the offer. Friends call out in alarm, asking whether he truly intends to betray humanity and whether he has forgotten who raised him, but Huzumi slips into a trance, smiling that he simply knows how to read the wind and go where it favors him, and the dragon amusedly accepts that explanation and offers him a chance to prove it. With a crackling surge the dragon channels power into Huzumi, who cries out in pain as a new hand forms where his arm was severed. Everyone watches in stunned silence while the dragon commands him to demonstrate his worth, and with the newly grown, dragon-like hand Huzumi declares his fealty, addressing the beast as Lord Aza, King Dragon. Mika declares that they cannot allow Huzumi to act as he pleases any longer, and Fuma agrees, vowing they must stop him even if it costs their lives. They step forward to confront him, but Huzumi only laughs, mocking them for thinking they can take him on, and dares them to prove what they are made of as he raises his sword. Shu tries to stop them, shouting not to fight among themselves, but Mika snaps at him to move aside and calls him nonsense, then launches an ice chain technique. The frozen chains lash toward Huzumi, but he smirks, calling it too weak, and shatters them with a swing of his blade. Fuma attempts to strike with a kick, but he catches her leg midair and slams her into the ground. She realizes too late she cannot dodge his follow-up as he slashes at her, yet his sword is suddenly diverted by Mika's magic, who shouts for him to release her. He tries again to break the chains while Mika rushes to help Fuma up, and Fuma thanks her, while Mika warns they must think of something against his dangerous attacks. Huzumi growls that it was only luck and swears their luck ends here, then slams his sword into the ground, splitting the earth and roaring for them to show their trump cards. The floor collapses beneath them, and Fuma and Mika plunge deeper into the cave, crashing hard onto the stone floor. Mika lies unconscious and gravely injured, while Fuma desperately shakes her and cries for her to wake up. From above, Hizumi descends slowly, levitating down with an aura of energy, sneering that now they can see the difference in their strength. Fuma shouts that he is a disgrace and promises Shinji will end him, but Hizumi laughs darkly, saying she will not have to wait, because he plans to face Shinji himself. His body surges with terrifying energy as he raises his sword and bellows for them to die, and Fuma squeezes her eyes shut, clutching Mika tightly and apologizing to Shinji in her heart as the killing strike closes in. But the attack is suddenly absorbed into the air, vanishing before it can reach them, and Fuma stares in shock, wondering what happened, until Shu steps forward from the front, grinning that it was close and boasting that he was almost killed by Shinji just now. Fuma feels confused by what just happened, and Hizumi accuses Shu of shifting the trajectory of his attack, to which Shu admits it and praises Hizumi for noticing before suggesting they call it a day for now. Hizumi, wary and unsettled by an ability he has never seen, warns Shu to be careful, and Shu proposes that Hizumi take the dragon and escape the singularity while the others pretend none of this occurred. Fuma rejects the idea, warning that letting the dragon loose would turn unprepared soldiers outside into sacrifices, but Shu points out that they are badly injured and need treatment, reminding them he only joined to make up the numbers and arguing that even if Hizumi and the dragon reach the outside, they likely cannot do much because Hizumi was crushed by Shinji, so there is still time for Shinji to return and finish it. Hizumi listens to this and sees rage flare across his face. His nerves twitch, his eyes redden, and he swings his sword with a death threat that Shu barely dodges as he jokes that Hizumi surprised him and that he was almost overwhelmed. Hizumi answers with a flame-10 strike slash that twists through the air but begins to be absorbed by Shu's technique. Shu urges him to stop and claims to be a pacifist, but Hizumi snarls for him to stop defending and come at him. Shu, eyes closed until now, finally opens them and reveals he is not an ordinary boy but a very powerful one, and as his true colors show, purple, tentacle-like energies coil outward around Shu and begin to lash toward Hizumi, who grits his teeth and braces himself against the sudden turn of events. Shu's strikes rain down with terrifying precision, blasting into Hizumi until he collapses against the ground, battered but still clinging to his pride, teeth clenched as he shakes and demands to know what kind of power Shu has awakened. Shu replies coolly that he doesn't go around telling people things like that and advises Hizumi to take the dragon and leave, insisting there's no point in dragging this fight on. But Hizumi leaps up, sword raised, declaring that he refuses to lose to someone like him, only for Shu to casually swipe a finger and form a barrier that blocks the strike, reminding him such attacks only harm himself. With a sudden movement, Shu's counter-assaults crash from every direction, left, right, above, below, hammering Hizumi's body until he reels in disbelief, mind racing over whether he is truly going to be defeated like this and what unimaginable power Shu wields. Fuma, watching in shock, shares the same thought as Hizumi cries out that his flames cannot be absorbed and drives his blade into the ground, releasing a flame shockwave. Yet Shu spreads his hand wide and rips open a crack in reality, turning the force back onto Hizumi, who is engulfed by his own attack and falls once more, despairing over why only he keeps losing. Shu steps forward, declaring that playtime is finished, but in that instant the dragon emerges behind him, laughing as it drives its claws into Shu's abdomen. Fuma screams in horror, and even Hizumi stares in disbelief as the dragon hoists Shu upward, mocking that thanks to his spiritual energy its wounds have healed and it has ascended to a higher plane of existence. The dragon flings Shu aside and declares that it will break out of the singularity, hunt down the humans who sealed it, and make them pay, and Hizumi, eyes shining with hope, begs the beast to take him along and promises to be useful, but the dragon coldly calls him useless trash, lifts him by the head, and squeezes until his skull pops and his body drops like a broken husk. Then turns its fury toward the others and tells Fuma that her turn has come. She panics, and the badly injured Shu calls her close to whisper urgent instructions that when the Azure Dragon launches its next strike he will open a crack in the singularity exit, and she must grab Mika and flee while he holds the line. And though she protests that he will die if he stays, he laughs through his pain and insists that since Shinji entrusted them to him he will protect them no matter the cost. The dragon roars and hurls an attack at Shu as he opens the exit, and Fuma, scooping Mika onto her shoulder, flees through the crack while shouting for him to survive and return. The dragon taunts that a would-be hero must die first, but Shu only laughs that killing him will not be so simple. On the other side of the cave, Shinji, utterly spent from repeated attempts to crack the huge crystal, admits he is exhausted and that the thing is heavier than it should be, and Yui urges him to rest because he has been hauling the giant seal the whole way, but he flexes and shrugs it off as mere training. Then Mika and Fuma tumble through the opening and fall into view, and Fuma cries out for Shinji to hurry and help Shu. Shinji steadies Fuma while Yui supports Mika, and he demands to know from Shu what happened and why they are both so battered, to which Fuma explains through heavy breaths that Shu confronted the Azure Dragon so they could escape and took grievous wounds in the process. Shinji's mind races as he realizes this must be the same beast that fled earlier, and he resolves aloud that he understands the situation and will head there immediately, instructing Yui and Fuma to take Mika and the crystal out at once. Yui protests, reminding him the dragon has already advanced to the Iron Vein stage, but Shinji only glances back and promises he will return with Shu, leaving her tense, but unable to stop him as he sprints off. Meanwhile, Shu is being pounded mercilessly by the dragon, every slash and strike pushing him closer to collapse, and though he admits the blows hurt, he smirks bitterly that this is not his first time staring death in the face, only for the dragon to mock that he cannot even open a crack in space anymore because it has sealed it off with its own energy, and it sneers that he should learn what true despair feels like. Shu coughs and retorts that no matter how much pain it deals, he has too much grit to beg for his life, angering the beast into unleashing another devastating shockwave from its wings and gaping jaws. And just as it is about to crush Shu completely, Shinji appears, sword in hand, intercepting the strike with a blaze of power. The dragon roars in fury at the sight of him while Shinji, calm and sharp, tells Shu that he owes him one and will handle things from here. But Shu, bloodied yet grinning, warns him not to talk as if he were already finished, saying he is not ready to die yet. Shinji replies with a brief apology and declares that the rest is his fight, then steps toward the dragon, stating coldly that he spared it once only out of concern for Yui's safety and now will show no restraint. Shinji's eyes narrow as he finishes his words, adding that the dragon will not be escaping this time, but the beast only laughs thunderously, mocking him by declaring that it has already advanced to the Iron Vein stage while Shinji remains at Spirit Spring level 9, boasting that killing him now would be no harder than crushing an insect. Shinji smirks and challenges it to prove its claim, leaping skyward to meet the creature head-on. The dragon lashes out with a mighty strike, but Shinji slips past it, maneuvering above its massive body, prompting the dragon to sneer that such evasions are nothing but cheap tricks. In the same instant, Shinji's blade arcs toward its neck, biting against its hardened scales, and though the beast roars, Shinji realizes grimly that its defenses have indeed grown stronger with this evolution. He retaliates with a thunder flame burst slash, only for the dragon to counter with a raging wing storm, their powers colliding in a blinding clash, but the creature manages to slam him aside with its tail, sending him crashing violently against the stone wall. Rising to his feet, battered but unfazed, Shinji wipes the blood from his lips and taunts that if this is truly the best the Iron Vein stage can do, he is not impressed, enraging the dragon further as it shrieks, demanding how a mere human dares survive its power. Shinji answers with another thunder flame burst slash, the blade blazing blue as it carves through the air, but the dragon conjures a massive shield of energy to block, and the battlefield erupts as they trade blows with every ounce of their strength. Shinji is struck repeatedly, coughing blood yet refusing to fall, while the dragon scoffs that this hopeless struggle only proves the vast difference between their realms. Still grinning through the pain, Shinji admits aloud that it may indeed be a challenge for a Spirit Spring level 9 to overcome an Iron Vein opponent, causing the dragon to falter in surprise as he explains that he makes it sound light only because he has been holding back. His eyes blaze as he reveals he restrained himself deliberately, wanting first to test what the dragon was truly capable of. The dragon clenches its teeth in disbelief, the thought gnawing at its mind that perhaps Shinji has been concealing something far greater, and it blurts out in defiance that no human could possibly reach the Iron Vein stage. Shinji answers calmly, explaining that he had originally intended to make his breakthrough in a secure place, since it was his first time attempting it, and he did not know what to expect, so he deliberately suppressed the vast spiritual energy within his body. Rising steadily, he drives his sword into the ground with a firm thud, cracking his knuckles as his expression hardens, and adds that because the other cultivators have already been slain and Mika and the rest have managed to escape to safety, it no longer matters even if the process has risks. At that moment, a glowing screen manifests before him, declaring that the required spiritual energy has been accumulated and asking if he wishes to advance, and without hesitation he chooses yes. Instantly his entire body ignites with violent currents of power, arcs of blue lightning bursting around him as his form is engulfed in a storm of energy, and the dragon recoils in shock at the sight. Shinji lifts his gaze, the air trembling with his surging aura, and declares with unwavering resolve that he is ready, commanding the dragon to come at him with everything it has. The dragon's mind reeled in disbelief, unable to accept that a human could truly step into the Iron Vein stage, while Shinji hovered above wreathed in swirling blue energy, taunting it with a calm question about whether it was getting cold feet. The dragon roared back that his power was only borrowed and that it would show him what real strength was, but before the words were even finished, Shinji's blade had already carved across its neck, leaving it stunned. Shinji smirked, admitting almost casually that he still lacked full control of his new strength and had nearly killed it in one stroke, and he promised not to let the beast die easily after all the torment it had inflicted on Fuma and the others. In desperation, the dragon unleashed its trump card, Dragon Fist, lashing out with a massive strike, but Shinji slipped past it effortlessly with speed that left the dragon shaken, forcing it to wonder if he truly had reached the Iron Vein stage. Shinji answered that doubt with a devastating thunder flame slash that tore across the dragon's body, drawing blood, and then leveled his sword in warning, saying the next blow would be aimed at its left side and that any reckless movement might cause him to kill it by accident. Snarling, the dragon countered with a searing laser slash, but Shinji met every strike with blinding lightning flame slashes, weaving around its power as though its attacks were nothing. Their clash thundered across the cavern until Shinji leapt high, spinning in a 360-degree arc around the beast, and drove his blade down into its head near the neck, declaring the strike to be vengeance for Fuma and Mika, with the next reserved for Shu. The dragon twisted in alarm, realizing it could not withstand much longer, and in desperation turned its gaze to Shu, thinking to use his life as a distraction. It hurled a massive energy ball straight toward him, intent on ending him, while Shu clenched his teeth in defiance. The attack was so close that even Shinji could not immediately decide how to intercept it, but he still lunged to block, forcing the dragon to seize that opening to flee the battlefield. Breathing heavily, Shinji turned at once to Shu and asked if he was all right. Shu clenches his teeth, thinking to himself that Shinji must not worry about him and instead focus on not letting the dragon escape. Shinji responds sharply that escape is out of the question and that he will not allow the beast to get away, then tells Shu he needs him to keep what he is about to do a secret. Shu, confused but trusting, agrees without hesitation. At that moment, Shinji's entire body begins to radiate with a galaxy-like energy that swirls around him, something entirely new and overwhelming. Shu shields his face with his hand, stunned by the sight, wondering if this is truly the power of the Iron Vein stage and whether Shinji actually possesses three distinct spiritual energies coexisting in his body. With resolve, Shinji grips his sword tightly and unleashes a technique he calls Thunder Flame or Aura Splash, hurling it toward the dragon's retreating figure. The strike shoots forward in a fraction of a second and collides directly with the dragon's body, the force so immense that it obliterates the beast completely, ending it once and for all. Shu stands frozen, awed by the display, his thoughts reeling at whether this is the true strength of the Iron Vein stage. Shinji then moves to help him to his feet, and Shu, still dazed, asks if he truly has reached that level. Shinji answers humbly, telling him that he himself was also incredible, admitting he had not expected Shu to push the Azure Dragon that far, and questions why he hides such strength. Shu replies that he fears one day losing control of it, explaining that his ability is something he calls spiritual division, and if he fails to manage the space around him, it could cause unpredictable destruction. Shinji places a reassuring hand on his shoulder and tells him that while it is true great power must be handled with care, he does not need to live in fear. He assures Shu that by refining his skill and mastering control, he will be able to protect even more people. Encouraged by those words, the two begin walking forward together. The scene shifts to the camp, where Fuma urgently explains that the Azure Dragon within the Singularity has evolved into the Iron Vein stage, and that Shinji and Shu are still inside, fighting desperately for their lives. General Gento, startled, demands clarification, asking what she just said and whether there truly was a dragon, then immediately presses to know what happened to the other cultivators. Fuma solemnly reports that they were all killed, and the general, deeply unsettled, repeats in disbelief that every one of them perished even though they had all been cultivators at Spirit Spring level 7 or higher. Yui steps forward and adds that the dragon's strength after its evolution into the Iron Vein stage far surpassed anything they could have imagined. The general clenches his teeth and mutters in frustration, wondering how things could have come to this. Fuma then urges him directly, insisting that he assemble his troops immediately and enter the Singularity to support Shinji, warning that something terrible will happen if they do not act. Yui turns to the two chairmen, pleading for their help as well, reminding them that without reinforcement Shinji and Shu will not be able to hold on. The general responds firmly that he understands, promising to gather an elite unit and dispatch them without delay. Moments later, the troops stand assembled in front of the cave entrance. One officer instructs them, ordering the first squad to confirm their ammunition and the second to review the plan of action one final time. The soldiers respond with a sharp, "Yes, sir," and ready their weapons, aiming cautiously into the cave. Just then, Shinji and Shu emerge from within, taken aback at the sight of the soldiers aiming their guns toward them. Fuma rushes forward, exclaiming in relief that Shinji is safe, and Yui also hurries to ask if he is injured. Both approach with worry, but Shinji answers calmly that he is perfectly fine and there is nothing to worry about, before turning to Fuma to question why all of this preparation was necessary. She explains that they had been preparing to head inside to give him backup. He assures her there is no longer any need, as the Azure Dragon has already been defeated. The soldiers gasp in shock, voices rising as they echo in disbelief that he actually defeated the Azure Dragon. Shinji confirms it, saying the Singularity should now be safe and urges them to head inside to search for any survivors, adding that the corpse of the dragon still lies there but he doubts anything else dangerous remains. The general, still trying to grasp the enormity of his words, nods and says that if Shinji claims so, they will confirm it for themselves. He then leads his unit inside the cave to investigate. As the elite unit moves deeper into the Singularity, their steps echo against the cavern walls until their eyes fall upon the immense, lifeless body of the Azure Dragon sprawled across the ground. For a moment, silence overtakes them, then one soldier mutters in awe that it is a real dragon and confesses he has never seen one before. Another whispers that this is truly Mr. Shinji's doing, his strength on a completely different level. General Gento stands still, scanning the ruined battlefield, his gaze taking in the devastation carved into the earth and walls. Inwardly, he admits that Shinji seems even stronger than a nuclear weapon and questions how this is even possible. He cannot believe that a single man not only fought but defeated an Iron Vein stage dragon in reality. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, Shu sits on a bed as multiple doctors bandage his injuries. He winces occasionally but remains composed while the medical team works. One doctor reports to Shinji that the treatment is finished, and although Shu sustained many wounds, he did not lose much blood, so his life is not in danger. Shinji approaches the bedside and asks how Shu is feeling. With a faint smile, Shu jokes that he has just realized he is not dead yet, then lowers his voice to ask Shinji for a favor. Shinji replies without hesitation, asking what it is. Shu requests that Shinji keep his true strength a secret for a while. Without pressing further, Shinji nods and assures him that if he does not want to talk about it, he will not say a word. Shu exhales softly, thanking Shinji sincerely for his understanding. Shinji straightens, saying that if Shu seems stable, he is going to check on Yui's parents. As he steps out of the room, he finds General Gento and Yui waiting in the corridor. He asks if they have made any progress with their analysis. The chairman present alongside Yui shakes his head, and Yui explains they still have not found a way to break through the crystal. Through the window of the adjoining chamber, Shinji sees the large crystal surrounded by a team of scientists and doctors, all working under harsh lights with various instruments. The chairman grimly states that the seal created by the crystal is incredibly strong. They have already tried multiple methods, yet it does not even crack. Shinji's mind flashes back to the system notification he saw during his battle, that reaching the Iron Vein stage would allow him to absorb the energy used for the seal. Since he has successfully evolved, he realizes he may finally have a chance to break it. Turning back to them, he says he will give it a try and requests that everyone except Yui leave the room. The chairman nodded in understanding and, with that, all the doctors and scientists along with him exited the room, leaving only Shinji and Yui before the glowing crystal as Yui asked what he was planning to do and if there was anything she could do to help. Shinji placed his hand on the crystal and calmly explained that an immensely powerful sealing energy was contained inside it. Unstable, and the very reason the crystal was so strong and indestructible, and that he intended to absorb this energy first, believing that if he could draw it completely into his body with his spiritual power, he could break the seal, which left Yui staring in alarm and asking if he would not be hurt by doing something so dangerous and whether it was even possible. But he reassured her with quiet confidence that for him, this level of energy was no longer a problem. Though he added that the whole incident had revealed one thing clearly: at the rate she and the others were growing, they were far too slow. to handle the crises ahead, causing her to frown inwardly at being called slow and think that he was the absurd one for breaking through to the Iron Bane stage mere months after awakening. Yet before she could speak, Shinji stepped closer, saying that when he absorbed this energy, he would share some of his spiritual power with her so she could accelerate her own evolution, and she looked at him in shock, asking if he truly meant to share spiritual energy with her, and whether he had also awakened an ice attribute, but he replied that he still only had thunder, fire, and light, which made her protest that her body could not accept such energies. But just then a system screen appeared stating that Shinji had evolved to the Iron Vein stage and had been granted a bonus spiritual energy pill, which when consumed would allow a person to add a new spiritual energy attribute to their body, and Shinji smiled, telling her not to worry because he had found the perfect item for her back in the singularity, then held out the glowing pill in his palm as she stared at it in astonishment. Yui was stunned as she gazed at the pill, her voice trembling as she asked what it was, realizing in disbelief that it was a spirit spring elixir spoken of in the ancient texts, a pill so rare and precious that only apothecaries of old could craft them and that its existence in the modern era should have been impossible. But Shinji simply replied that if she knew what it was then no further explanation was needed and urged her to take it quickly, yet she raised her hand and protested that she could not accept something so valuable, insisting that he keep it for himself since it would surely be of use to him later, though he reassured her with steady confidence that he had many ways to grow stronger and a single pill meant little to him, while adding that if she did not take it then the spiritual energy transfer they were about to perform would overwhelm her body, so she accepted the pill with a nod, saying she would follow his words, and consumed it, immediately gasping as a torrent of power surged through her veins, her body convulsing as if electrocuted and revolving with purple, red, and blue energy while she screamed in pain, and Shinji quickly placed a calming hand on her head, telling her not to resist the flow as he guided her through it until her cries subsided and the energy began to stabilize. Then he pressed his other palm to the crystal as the energy coursing through Yui connected to it, startling her as she realized what was happening until she looked at him in wonder and whispered that from this moment onward she too had become a dual attribute practitioner, her eyes wide as she asked if he was really saying he had turned her into one. And as she gradually gained control, the golden electric energy swirled around her body, flowing through Shinji and directly into the crystal, making him smile with quiet satisfaction as he thought that from this day forward, this power belonged to her. The scene then shifted, showing Shinji returning home and opening the door where Fuma greeted him warmly, wrapping her arm around his and smiling as she welcomed him back before eagerly asking if he had succeeded in rescuing Yui's parents. Shinji tells her that it went well and that her parents lie in a coma at the hospital, but he believes they will wake within a few days. And as they sit on the sofa she replies that this is great and then asks after Yui, wondering if she is all right. Shinji answers that Yui is fine but is being kept in the hospital for observation to make sure there are no side effects now that she has awakened a new attribute. And when Fuma presses to know what that attribute is he says she can see for herself, and reaches to show her. But at that moment her phone rings and she wonders aloud why she would get a call at this time, and when Shinji asks who it is she says it is her best friend Haruka, who rarely calls, and answers the phone with a cautious hello and asks if something has happened, whereupon Haruka panics and tells her that a practitioner named Shu from Fuyutsu City who took part in the tournament is involved and that a super mutant level monster has appeared there, wiping out the army and every practitioner and forcing Haruka to hide in an underground shelter while she confesses the situation is hopeless and that she does not know what to do. Fuma tries to calm her, promising to contact her grandfather and to come save her, but Haruka admits she has half given up and begs Fuma to tell Shu, if Fuma knows him, not to return because Fuyutsu City is a living hell and anyone who goes back will die immediately. And after ending the call Fuma looks to Shinji who points upward and asks how fast they can reach Fuyutsu City from here, while Fuma reassures Haruka, now speaking into the phone again, that she must not worry and that she swears she will save her. Haruka thanks Fuma before the line cuts, and Fuma calls back, shouting hello and asking if Haruka can hear her, but Shinji rises and tells her to leave Fuyutsu City to him, ordering Fuma to prepare a helicopter at once so he can go find Shu and they can make a concrete plan, and she replies that she will prepare it immediately. In the hospital Shu sips water through a straw when Shinji comes by and asks how he feels, and Shu, putting on a weary grin, says he might not have much time left, because a man who looked like the Grim Reaper just appeared in his room, which makes Shinji furious as he reports that a super mutant, level monster has appeared in Fuyutsu City and that practitioners and the army there are being wiped out after a call from Haruka. Whereupon Shu bolts upright from the bed and asks if anything happened to Haruka. Admitting that he knows her because she is the daughter of the Fuyutsu City Practitioner Association chairman and that every member knows her, and Shinji wonders to himself if Shu might have feelings for the girl before saying aloud that he is heading to Fuyutsu City for a rescue mission and needs a guide who knows the chairman there and asks if Shu can move, and Shu scrambles to his feet, saying leave it to him, and that when they reach Fuyutsu City he can guide them even with his eyes closed. Shinji told an officer that he wanted to borrow a laptop capable of satellite communication, and the man in front of him addressed him as Mr. Shinji, admitting that no one could deny his achievements and everyone recognized them, but explained that military laptops contained classified information and could not simply be handed over, to which Shinji firmly replied that it was not a request but a decision. The officer grew angry and told him he was asking the impossible since the military had its own regulations, pointing out that even though his combat power was extraordinary, that did not grant him authority to access sensitive data. But Shinji snapped back about regulations, demanding if this was really the time to argue about rules when a super mutant level monster had appeared in Fuyutsu City, which shocked the other officers, who demanded to know what he just said and why they had not received intel about it. And Shinji told them that the local forces in Fuyutsu had already been wiped out, after which he seized the laptop and declared that he would be taking it, and no one dared to stop him. Soon after, they were sitting inside a helicopter with Shinji working on the laptop while Shu, glancing at it, admitted he could not believe the military had actually lent it out. To which Shinji explained that the device was packed with classified data but none of that mattered anymore because ever since spirit energy had been resolved all the old intel had become worthless. And Shu agreed, saying the world had changed and what used to be valuable intelligence was now nothing more than scraps waiting to be tossed, and outside the helicopter Fuma ran up, calling for them to be careful, while Shinji leaned out of the window and gave her a thumbs up, joking that he would be fine and to just pretend he had run to the convenience store for soy sauce and would be back before she knew it. Making her exclaim that it was unbelievable he was still cracking jokes even at such a time, as the helicopter began to hover and lifted off into the sky. She prays that he will come back safely, and he worries aloud that he only hopes Fuyutsu City is not as bad as the reports say, then asks Shu how many cultivators were stationed there and what level their strongest reached. Shu answers that Fuyutsu is a mid-sized city with about 5,000 cultivators, most clustered around Spirit Spring level 9, roughly 20 at the upper end of level 9. And that the strongest known there was Haruka Wada, likely at the top tier of level 9, while the military garrison once stationed an elite force of about 1,000 soldiers with many surface-to-air missiles, all of which have been wiped out. Shinji absorbs that, and the pilot calls for final preparations as they approach Fuyutsu airspace, and from above the city they see it burning beneath a shroud of purple mist with zombie-like creatures swarming the streets and buildings collapsing as monsters run amok. Shinji wonders if this is the dark-attributed spirit energy again, and the pilot asks where they should land. But Shinji replies there is no need to land and orders the hatch open despite the pilot objecting that they are 6,000 meters up. Ignoring the protest, Shinji tells the pilot to open the gate, then informs Shu that he will go first to deal with the small fry while Shu calls him insane. The pilot warns that jumping from that height would shatter his body, but Shu grins and tells him not to underestimate the iron vein, and with that Shinji dives, striking the ground like a falling meteor and crashing into the hordes immediately. The zombie-like creatures surge toward him in overwhelming numbers, and Shinji, sword raised, tells them to die and begins to slash through them, mocking that if they are so eager to die he will gladly grant them that wish, his whole body enveloped in blue energy as he prepares to make his hands dirty in a furious massacre. Those zombies were no joke as they swarmed toward Shinji like an unstoppable tide, but they underestimated his power, and with overwhelming strength he cut them down one by one, slashing through their bodies, tossing their corpses aside, and taunting them by asking if they were getting cold feet before daring them to come at him again. From above, the pilot watched in disbelief, questioning if he was even human but insisting that no matter how strong he seemed, against a large enough force he would eventually run out of steam, while Shu scoffed that he was still underestimating Shinji. The pilot pressed back, pointing out that it looked like Shinji's body was nearing its limit, but on the ground Shinji was wiping his sword through left, right, and center before suddenly levitating into the air, shocking the zombies below and even stunning the pilot who shouted in disbelief at what he was seeing. Shinji then unleashed his Thunder Flame extermination technique, and the city erupted with blasts of yellow energy so powerful that even the helicopter shook violently, nearly knocking the pilot off control as he muttered that no human should be able to do something like that. Shu told him to focus on finding a suitable landing spot since they needed to regroup with Shinji. But when the pilot asked if he too intended to jump, Shu laughed nervously, admitting that if he jumped he would just turn into ground beef because he was still just a regular civilian, leaving the pilot disappointed. Eventually, they managed to land, and Shu secured a jeep while thinking in awe that Shinji's destructive power was truly overwhelming, and now he finally understood what it meant to reach the Iron Vein realm. Driving through the ruins, he caught up with Shinji, who climbed into the jeep as Shu asked if he was all right or injured, only for Shinji to dismissively reply that he would never go all out against mere monsters and urge that they just finish the mission and move on. He then asked if Shu knew exactly where the evacuation site and Haruka Wada's mansion were located, and Shu, looking over a map, explained that it was on the outskirts of Fujitsu, at the corner near an abandoned factory that seemed to have been used as a shelter by other cultivators. Shinji said he understood and declared they would rescue her first, then asked Shu if he didn't think there was something strange about the entire situation in Fujitsu as the jeep rumbled forward through the ruined city, prompting Shu to turn toward him and ask what exactly he meant. Noting that the unusual number of monsters and the vast affected area made it feel orchestrated rather than a sudden outbreak, to which Shu asked if he meant someone had lured them there deliberately, and Shinji confirmed it was highly likely, while Shu silently prayed that Haruka would be okay as they drove toward the evacuation site. Upon arrival, they realized the place felt more like a trap than a shelter, as it was empty, undamaged, and completely lacking defensive measures, prompting them to wonder whether there had been no time to set defenses or if someone had removed them, when they then heard a voice, turned toward it, and saw a girl lying on the ground. Shu cried out Haruka's name, rushed to her, shook her shoulder, begging her to wake, and told Shinji that she was seriously wounded, her internal spirit energy flow disrupted, and she needed immediate treatment, and just then Shinji sensed danger and warned to look out as a huge cage dropped from above, trapping both Haruka and Shu, though Shinji narrowly avoided being caught. Shu clenched his teeth as someone laughed, declaring the heroes had come to rescue his goddess, a voice Shu immediately recognized, and when the man stepped forward, Shu shouted to Kudakira and demanded why he was there, and the man admitted that he had used Haruka as bait to draw out for Wano Natsuki, the Supreme Commander's granddaughter, explaining that if he captured her, he could make the entire military leadership dance in his palm. Shu grabs the railing and shouts that Kiria must explain why on earth he is doing this and asks what the Fujitsu City Cultivator Association ever did to him, reminding him that he was on death row and that if he had not suddenly awakened that powerful spirit energy he would still be rolling in person waiting to die. The man lands and scoffs that talk of death row and past laws is irrelevant in the world they now live in, insisting that power is everything and the weak are meant to be weeded out, and Shu snaps back that this does not mean the whole world should bend to his will or that his strength gives him the right to trample others' lives and turn all of Fujitsu City into his personal hunting ground, whereupon the man smirks and asks if Shu has a problem with that, declaring that he takes no orders from the Fujitsu City Cultivator Association because they were weak and are dead now. Shu fires back with fury that the man has no idea how many cultivators have died for his so-called training and points out that even Haruka risked her life to help him level up and was seriously hurt by him, but the man laughs, brushes his hair, and claims they died because they were stupid to waste their lives for nothing, asking rhetorically whether a true powerhouse would sacrifice themselves for a bunch of ants, which makes Shu curse him as a bastard, and Shinji steps forward and remarks that the situation is interesting, prompting the man to ask who he is and where he came from. So Shinji lays a hand on his arm and says he is Shu's friend, that he has heard everything the man has said and finds that way of thinking naive, and when the man demands to know his deal and accuses him of coming out of nowhere, Shinji laughs and says that if being strong gives someone the right to make the rules, then what happens when someone stronger shows up and decides who lives or dies? Which makes the man's eyes flash red as he angrily asks whether Shinji is threatening him. Shinji warned the man that he was only giving him a warning and that he was still far from being truly strong, and the man responded by forcing all his energy into a single punch and leaping above, prompting Shu to shout at Shinji to watch out since the man was using the same lightning attribute as him. Shinji raised his sword and blocked the man's attack, and the man became visibly frustrated as the system notified that intense lightning attribute spirit energy had been detected, allowing Shinji to absorb it and increase his own lightning attribute level, which Shinji acknowledged with satisfaction before slashing at the man, forcing him to fall back, and then Shinji instructed Shu to take Haruka Wada and escape, but Shu admitted that, for some reason, he could not use his powers at the moment, and the man laughed, mocking him for thinking they could escape so easily. Shinji explained that the iron cage trapping Shu was made from a special material designed specifically to suppress cultivators' powers, rendering anyone inside effectively an ordinary human, and then told Shu to stay down while he tested the cage, cutting it in half with his sword, which made the man clench his teeth and curse, and once Shu was free, he opened a dimensional portal, took Haruka in his arms, and said that once she was somewhere safe he would return, while Shinji told them not to bother waiting for him and to go immediately. And Shu along with Haruka disappeared into the dimension. The man then addressed Shinji, noting his boldness for someone of his power level and asking if he truly thought he could intimidate him, to which Shinji calmly replied that he was merely stating the truth and that the man was still weak, prompting the man to clench his teeth and warn him not to get cocky just because he had cut through one cage. The man began gathering purple energy around his hand, forming it into a spear, and warned not to underestimate him, calling Shu a cultivator trash, then thrust the thunderclap shadow spear directly at Shu, who dodged narrowly and praised him for having some moves. The man then ran towards Shinji, shouting in frustration that he had dodged the attack but questioning how long he could keep it up, and began striking Shinji from all directions, but Shinji dodged skillfully, causing the man to taunt him, asking why he was only dodging and where the earlier bravado had gone, claiming it seemed like all he could manage was to evade. Shinji, taking a deep breath, expressed disappointment that this was supposedly the man's full strength and then observed that even if a super mutant appeared during a normal disaster, it would not escalate like this. The man clenches his teeth and snaps angrily at Shinji, and Shinji responds by extending his sword and warning that if this is all the man has he will die that day. The man snarls that Shinji should be quiet and vows to show what someone at Spirit Spring level 9 can do, summoning swirling dark, demonic purple energy around his fist and forming dozens of thunder spears of shadowy power aimed at Shinji, who nimbly dodges them and taunts that they are far too slow, prompting the man to thrust a lightning spear at him, which Shinji likewise evades while mocking that the man has power but lacks the brains to use it. Then Shinji moves with lightning speed and tells him this is the end before cleaving the man cleanly through the middle so he spits blood and collapses, still insisting that he is Spirit Spring level 9 at the highest tier. Shinji points out that Spirit Spring level 9 is all he is. But the man recoils in shock when Shinji reveals that a moment ago he truly had no detectable Nora, but now he has reached Iron Vein level 1, and the man's eyes bulge as he realizes Shinji's breakthrough and immediately drops to his knees begging for mercy, promising to apologize and serve for life if spared, while pleading that he had been wrong and should never have met Shinji's eyes. Shinji coldly reminds him that he himself preached that the strong make the rules and the weak follow. And now that the man is weak he seeks to change those rules, but the man begs that he was not the ringleader and was only following orders and had no choice, and when Shinji presses, asking whether he was supposed to be the strongest cultivator in Fuyutsu City, the man admits he is not the strongest and reveals that the calamity in Fuyutsu was not his plan but another's, that someone else orchestrated the destruction without caring about destroying the city because he wanted to use it as an experiment. Shinji scoffs at the idea that the man claims he only wanted to test something and points out that using the people of Fuyutsu City as lab rats is monstrous, and the man admits coldly that he does not care about human life and that even the military are mere pawns to his plans. When Shinji asks how strong this mastermind is, the man answers that he is at Iron Vein level 3, and when the man pleads for clemency, begging Shinji to let him go, Shinji drives his sword toward him without mercy and declares that spirit energy has returned to the earth and the rules of the world have changed, but that wrongdoers must still face consequences, leaving the man broken and still sneering that Shinji is a pathetic loser who stands no chance against the Iron Vein level 3 adversary, taunting that Shinji will die too. Shinji replies that he does not need the man's concern and vows to send that mastermind straight to hell. Then notes that the man's eyes close as the system detects lightning attribute spirit energy and announces absorption, and as lightning energy flows from the wounded man into Shinji the system reports that Shinji's lightning spirit energy has leveled up to level 2, and with his fist clenched and blue energy whirling around him Shinji recognizes this as the power of Iron Vein level 2. Shinji came out and called for Shu, who was attending to his crush, and Shu turned around, asking if Shinji was okay and what had happened inside. Shinji reassured him not to worry, saying the threat was already dead, which caused Shu's eyes to widen, realizing that taking down a max value spirit spring level 9 so quickly was no small feat. Shinji added that once Shu reached the Iron Vein realm, he should be able to handle something like that too, and then asked if the girl he had a crush on was safe, which flustered Shu, who questioned Shinji's sudden concern. Shinji explained that he had seen how furious Shu got when she collapsed earlier, noting that he had not been acting like himself and had been desperate, and asked about her condition. Shu replied that her vitals were stable, but her consciousness had been sealed by dark attribute spirit energy, warning that if the seal was not broken soon, she might end up in a vegetative state. Shinji points toward the blue energy swirling around him and says there is nothing to worry about because lightning attribute resists dark attribute, and he should be able to break the seal quickly. So he directs his energy at the girl's forehead, and her body begins to bubble with blue light as the dark energy seems to lift away and her eyes open to see Shu and Shinji standing before her. After which she asks who they are and where she is in a dazed voice, and both men note that she seems confused and wonder if she is okay. Shinji thinks she might be out of it from the seal, and the girl turns to Shu and asks why he is there, prompting Shu to explain that he received an SOS from Haruka and rushed back from Tenkeishi City, at which she accuses him of coming back to a dangerous Fuyutsu city and warns that returning to a place that avoids head-on fights will only get him killed for nothing, while another voice, Eldrick, remarks that calling someone who took down a max-value spirit spring level 9 a coward is excessive, and the girl snaps back in disbelief at the reference before chastising Shu for dragging at her into the disaster and insisting Fuyutsu City is no place for them now. Shu tries to calm her, saying he could not ignore an emergency and that the terrain is complicated, so he had to guide Shinji. And when she reacts, Shu blushes and insists he really did come. She breathes and tells him she will blame him later but thanks him for coming, and Shinji, noting that the two clearly have a shared history, simply replies that they are welcome while thinking inwardly about their mutual connection. The girl explained that they needed to leave Fuyutsu City immediately because the longer they stayed, the worse things would get, but Shinji opposed her, asking what exactly had happened in Fuyutsu City. She recounted that ever since he left for Tenkeishi City, it had been raining non-stop, and at first, everyone thought it was just a change in the weather, but the rain never stopped, and then those who got wet began turning into zombies. Shu clenched his teeth, questioning if that was even possible, and the girl confirmed, saying it had appeared normal at first, but as time passed, the rain seemed to erode the people, their bodies began changing, their minds deteriorated, eyes sank into their sockets, skin rotted, and they became zombie-like, attacking indiscriminately, even their own friends. By the time people realized something was wrong, it was already too late. The rain kept falling, and anyone who stepped outside became a victim. The military and the Cultivators Association tried to stop it, but even spirit energy attacks failed. She confirmed that Fuyutsu City had effectively turned into a zombie city. Shinji asked if the military and Cultivators Association members had also turned into zombies. She replied that not all had. Those caught in the rain initially did, but most had avoided it. When Shinji asked where they were now, she explained they had disappeared, and Shu pressed for clarification, to which she said that from the central tower, they had detected a powerful energy signal, gathering abnormal spirit energy, and when the higher-ups from the Military and Cultivators Association went to investigate, everyone who went vanished without a trace, no cries for help or words. As if the city had swallowed them all. Shinji put a hand on his chin, thinking about the disappearances, and the girl interjected that he had sent Korea to the afterlife, but he had been the top cultivator at max value spirit spring level 9. Shinji pointed his finger, noting that just because Korea had died, this was clearly not a natural disaster but a deliberately created one, and he concluded that the one behind it all was a cultivator at Iron Vein level 3.